Welcome into Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These is dog takes. Can I talk that dog? What's up? You like that? You really like that? Let's shut up and grind some tape.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into the Film Guy Network on a wonderful Monday evening, our second live show of 3 live shows today. I figured today we'd break into the breaking news algorithm. We'd go ahead and hop in line with the Raiola take, the Carson Beck takes when the Carson Beck news broke. So a lot of you probably already listened to our live reactions from the Carson Beck news. He will be returning for his 4th year at the University of Georgia, his senior year, technically redshirt junior year as a starting quarterback, 2nd year as the named starter entering the season. We obviously have more reactions off of that news today. But that news wasn't sitting on the timeline longer than probably, 10 or 15 minutes, Jay Will?
Yeah.
Before ultimately the new news hit, which is Dylan Raiola flipping and committing to Nebraska. And I want to preface, because we're going to play Agent Brooks here today. We're going to put on the agent hat like my man's for the New York Giants agent. Have you seen my man's Captain Italian?
Yeah.
He is nuts. We're going to put on that agent hat right quick and play a little game of Agent Brooks, because I love to do it every once in a while. When I see a blatant mismanagement in public relations, which I think is what we had today, and a long lineage of public relations, I'm not going to call them nightmares. Let's call them mishaps from the Dylan Raiola camp today. We're going to play a little Agent Brooks. But I want to preface Agent Brooks with this statement. I personally do not have confirmation or reasons to believe that Dylan Raiola is a competition dodger. I don't believe that to be true. That being said, there is some overwhelming evidence that my timeline likes to throw in front of me. And if I were to be his agent, if I were to be the person that is in charge of controlling the narrative around this young man, we probably would have handled things a little bit differently today. Like, I don't know, letting the Carson Beck returning news sit for a little bit before we announce our decommitment, which by all means, everybody knew was kind of wrapped up bow on the present. That being said, there were still even last-minute communications with Georgia in the Raiola camp dating as, back to yesterday. Okay, so this news today was still news today. So why are we dropping it today? Because, again, if I'm going to play his fake agent, I'm going to let you know there is a narrative about this, right? There is a narrative about, quote-unquote, this guy likes to dodge competition. And this all could have been avoided, or at least another notch on this proverbial belt could have been avoided today by just letting this news sit for 24 hours or 36 hours, or hell, even better yet, letting this joker build all the way up until National Signing Day, because why not? You'd be the only guy on National Signing Day with any type of juice around your name, again, if I was playing your fake agent, okay? Which I know for a fact this kid's got representation, and they're smart people. They should be. They should be selected by smart people who understand this business, like his father, right? Played 12 years in the league, got good representation. You would imagine he would have good advice around this stuff, like I'm about to feed you, okay? There was obvious reporting and obvious signs that this recruitment in Raiola avoided the Arch Manning recruitment from get-go. Right? From get-go, there was no link to a possibility of if you land Arch, you have a chance to get Raiola. They had to be separate. That was rule number 1, okay? Or bullet point we heard, this guy avoiding competition. That was the very first little nugget we heard. The next one that a lot of people are going to run with now is he avoided the Ryan Puglisi competition. Everyone's going to try to run with that one. All right, so you got to avoid that one too. All right, he pushed out Kyle McCord at Nebraska. That's a narrative that this camp has to defy. All right, or at least has to answer for, or even if they don't, the public narrative is forcing it upon them. He got linked to Nebraska. All of a sudden, the quarterback that was linked to Nebraska no longer going there. A little fishy, right, with the timing of that situation as well. And now today, we get Carson's coming back. 10 minutes later, this kid declares that he is flipping to Nebraska. Again, I do not believe in this narrative of this kid is avoiding competition, but all of these bullet points are hard to defy if your job is to control the narrative around a young man, which is exactly what the case is right here. You got a 17-year-old kid who's extremely talented, is very, very good, going to have success in the world of college football. But man, that's not even the worst thing with regards to his public relations nightmare of today, okay? Because this, and I'm not going to allow us to crap on a 17-year-old, but this right here, this is public relations no-no. This is, why would you ever let that happen? Why not just tweet out an edit that you had Hayes Fawcett make for you? Why are we tweeting out poems? Because poems are going to leave us getting flamed in the mentions of everything. Again, the timing of this is all your control. You can decide when and where you want to do this, all right? And how you go about doing this is all in your control. In the realm of college dreams, where purposes take flight, enter Dylan Raiola, crafting his narrative in the night. Once lured by Georgia, where powerhouse glory gleamed, yet Nebraska's purpose in his heart brightly beamed. In the scarlet and cream, where legacies entwine, Dylan, like Rodgers, Rozier, and Crouch, a hero in the line. No longer a cog in some powerhouse machine, but a quarterback with an even grander ambition unseen. So fellow fans await with hope in the air for Dylan to choose his purpose to declare. In a weekend's decision, destiny calls to fulfill his purpose where a new destiny enthralls. Not like that, bro. Not like that. We can't be doing it like that. But hey, here's one thing I will give credit for, because I think it's important to note this. This recruitment, say what you want about all the agents involved, say what you want about the handlers involved, say what you want about uncle playing a role in this, say what you want about mom, dad, whatever. All right, whatever, move in all over the place, say what you want. This kid very obviously had a role in all of this. We watched that highlight film the other day. It was very obvious he made that sucker. Like, all of this has writings and clippings of a 17-year-old on it. And for that being said, all the control that gets thrown on all these high talented kids, this kid obviously played a major role in his own decision, so I want to give some kudos to that. But that right there, probably wouldn't have let that one out. What's up, Jay Will? Welcome in.
Nothing much, man. Yeah, kudos to you for being creative, doing it a different way, I guess. That kind of feels like that's kind of been the route that he's taken with his recruitment. It's a little different than most number one quarterbacks, handling business a little bit differently. And no shots there, but just the timing of everything, how it unfolded. Like, early National Signing Day is 2 days away. Like, I kind of figured that. I think most people assume that's when the decision will be made and that's when it'd be announced. And then to do it in a poem, which if he wrote that himself, dang, bro, maybe you got
Bars.
a career in literacy, but – I don't know, man. Just interesting all around.
I think this was ChatGPT give me a college commitment that sounds like a Christmas song.
You can put that through like a AI thing and see how many percentage points it is for an AI.
For an AI?
Yeah.
I had to do this for a competitor one time for plagiarism. Might have to check for ChatGPT plagiarism. It came back 87%, by the way.
Eesh.
Yeah, straight theft. Anyways, back to this discussion. I do question, again, agency hat. I do question the timing. Like, come on, man. We can do some things to avoid the additional criticism that you're ultimately going to open yourself up to, which is unwarranted. Which, again, that's the whole job. And for people saying that maybe he's not represented, I'm going to tell you right now, you were at the Elite 11, Evan. I know you're off camera here. Man's had multiple representation not groups, but people. All right, whether it was somebody handing him a bottle of water that he was endorsing openly, whether it was waiting for cameras to start rolling before he could put the special logo towel on him, whatever it was, every single portion of his recruitment from a personal perspective, like being in person and watching it, it seemed very controlled to me, very, very calculated. Every step of this really, really kind of arc that looked like this, it seemed somehow calculated the whole time. So this looked to me like, whoever approves these things just allowed this one through, which is fine. Again, commit how you want. But I told you guys before the show, I would imagine the upperclassmen at Nebraska will have multiple copies of that printed out. Multiple copies of that printed out, and probably put around the locker room just as like a, hey, welcome to this team. We're going to troll you relentlessly for your poem.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole timing around over the last week or so with his commitment and his recruitment process has been a little interesting. Like this last weekend, you're seeing pictures of Ryan Puglisi on campus at the University of Georgia now, and he's getting rolled in. And then I don't know if it's later that day or before that, but you see clips of Dylan Raiola at a volleyball game, I think it was, or something like that at Nebraska.
Wrestling match, I think.
Yeah, wrestling match. That's what it was. So like the timing in general of things like when they're released and whatnot, and how this has gone about the business and things, very interesting to me. Very unique, I should say.
I do want to get it on the record. The kid's going to be good. Like, he's going to go to Nebraska and he's going to be good. Is he going to be great? I don't know. I think that's the delineation between all these quarterbacks. That's why NFL GMs either make $100 million in their career or their career is not very long, right? Because you either hit on these things or you don't. And it's very much so a coin flip. But from a college perspective point or a production standpoint, I think he's going to do really, really well.
Yeah, I think even though we had some questions about his highlight tape.
Where are the rippers?
Yeah.
Where are the seeds, baby? That's
exactly.
all.
Like, you could clearly see very good at throwing the football, extremely talented, good head above his shoulders. He processed the information really well. It was just, there felt like an aspect of the game was missing. Of course, that'll be answered when he gets to Nebraska because you're going to have to see that on the football field at the college level. So, yeah, questions, but also no questions in regards to how talented he is.
Yep. And again, all the question marks from us come from he's not an A-plus athlete, okay? But I don't know if that'll ever get developed. But then again, like Pat Mahomes, I wouldn't classify as an A-plus athlete. He's an A-minus, okay, maybe a B-plus in terms of an NFL athlete. And will you rip a football? And again, man, it sounds like so silly to be sitting here talking about a guy who's like this talented with his arm to be questioning whether or not he's going to turn on one and absolutely, throw a piss missile. Like, we got to see those things. We eliminate a lot of the tree when we don't do those things. So I think that's enough on the Dylan Raiola news. Let's talk about the corresponding news to this, which was the news that happened about 10 minutes before, which was Carson Beck hitting the portal. And we broke into live coverage for this, but I want to give some more thoughts and allow Jay Will to get in here and hammer this topic out with us. But first, I want to welcome you guys in. We got a loaded show for you guys tonight. We're going to be talking about some of the news that broke on us over the weekend, like Smile Mondon coming back. Still a couple draft declarations that we're kind of hanging on and waiting around for. I think Georgia's going to pitch a shutout of all shutouts in this bowl game. I want to talk a little bit about that. The defensive back hire, I just got some thoughts because my mentions kind of ticked me off. So, sometimes we come on here and I fire things up, and I have a long open on this. We're going to open the show with how sometimes it's just never enough for some people, and we're going to get to that. Trust me. I just didn't want to cook you guys off the start today. We're going to cook you a little bit later, and then we're going to give you the latest on the portal stuff tonight. But make sure you hit that thumbs up button, liking, subscribing, rating, reviewing. I am Brooks Austin. He is Jay Will. Our boy Kirby is out tonight. This is the Film Guy Network. We are live Monday through Thursday, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock here on the channel. So if you're new to us, if you have found us today, welcome home. All right, you won't leave. I promise you'll love it around here. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're firing off in that chat and all that good stuff. Appreciate you for being here. I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. Okay, if you run over to Prize Picks today, use promo code Brooks, you'll get a 100% deposit match. What does that mean? You put up to $100, you will instantly get matched $100 over there on Prize Picks using only promo code Brooks. I also want to give a quick shout out to our friends at the Athletic Collection. All the posters around this studio you can and will find over at the Athletic Collection. The link to that website is in the description of this video. I've been told a lot of you folks are buying those. They make really good Christmas gifts for all your young dog fans out there. There's also some Atlanta Braves stuff in there, but the Atlanta Braves stuff I don't believe is an NIL play like these things are for these young football players. So a portion of those revenues will go directly into the pockets of those players. So help out a Georgia Bulldog today by running over to the Athletic Collection and purchasing some of those things. Carson Beck coming back. It's pretty big news, man. Pretty big news.
Yeah, I mean, I think it changes the entire trajectory and the entire outlook of the 2024 season, which is something that we've talked about.
Ooh,
I mean, you look
boy.
at the schedule next year, you got to go at Alabama, you got to go at Texas, you got to go at Ole Miss. And the last thing you want to do is you want to have a first-year starter like Gunnar Stockton going into that. So now you have a second-year starter with a first-round ceiling and Carson Beck coming back to operate that offense. And based on what we've seen the last weekend with Samile Munden Nudes and now Carson Beck, maybe there's a trend of some other guys coming back as well.
Hey, it didn't happen, but let's talk about what would have happened. Boy, you'd have been cooked if Carson Beck would have declared for the NFL draft. And when I said that to our Patreon audience, I told them you'd be up a creek with only one paddle in the boat, and that paddle is Gunnar Stockton. I believe in Gunnar Stockton. I think he's going to be a serviceable starter in college football. Whenever he makes his crack, he's going to be good. That being said, going into a season where you got to go to Texas, to Tuscaloosa, and now to Ole Miss, those 3 games look like a daggum gauntlet for a first-year starter. And by the way, there ain't no, easy walk into that sucker, all right? It's Clemson, and then, 3 weeks later, I think it's to Tuscaloosa or to Austin or whatever it is. You got bangers on that schedule next year. And a redshirt freshman going into that season would have, whatever you think about Gunnar Stockton, however positive you are about the future of that, it would have been not necessarily frightening. It would have been uneasy for you guys as a redshirt freshman in that. And by the way, he would have made some type of move in the portal had Beck declared, because I think it would be malpractice to enter a college football season where you might be playing 15 football games, 16 football games, and saying, yeah, I'm going to do that with a first-year starter and a freshman. Okay, and Ryan Puglisi on the roster. They would have taken an additional hat no matter what. You got to stay at least 3 scholarship players, in my opinion, at that position. This keeps them at that number with Carson Beck coming back. So you're right. It immediately adds a security blanket and thank God we avoided that nightmare, because it would have been one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking of security blankets, who do you think benefits most from this? Obviously, I would say Mike Bobo clearly benefits from this because it saves him an entire stressful offseason of like, okay, Gunner, we're going to figure it out with you, and then we're also going to try and find someone in the transfer portal, add some depth to this room, or maybe even be our starters. Like, who do you think benefits most from Carson Beck returning?
So the offense as a whole, but like Carson in particular will have 4 years now in this system, like a full 4 years learning and growing and really, really developing, and a second year now with Bobo. So that connection between the two, I also think you hit the nail on the head. It really, really helps Bobo out a lot in the matter of consistencies. And I think the chat has already kind of ran with my Gunner Stockton comments right there. I want to say, look, y'all had questions about Carson Beck going into a football season, and we saw, 45 attempts of him. We saw 2 years of him in a backup role. We saw garbage time. We saw spring games. We had a whole sample size of about 100 reps where I looked at it and said, we feel good about that evaluation. We know what that's going to be, so much so that I said he was going to lead the country in third down conversion rate, and he damn near did it. Like, we felt really, really comfortable about that. I don't know how any evaluator can look at the Gunner Stockton evaluation right now and know anything that in solitude. All right, now everything is projection, everything is promise, and there's tons of that in him, but there's tons of that in every football player that we'll talk about. There's still questions if he hasn't gotten on the field and shown us that there's confirmation of our biased thoughts. So I think he also gets another year to now be the full 2, right? All the development time. We talked about this with Brock having an inability to really have a chance to win that job because you spent 18 months as the 3, while the guy that you're going to have to compete with 18 months from now has been getting the developmental 2s reps. You're way behind. You're going to be way behind in a battle. That's not going to be the case for Gunner when he ultimately takes over this role, because he's going to have a full years of those 2s reps. Those are invaluable in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to anything like Stetson and even Carson leading up to last season, what they talked about, what played a huge role in their developmental is Stetson gave a lot of credit to guys like JT Daniels, being around those guys for multiple seasons and kind of getting to pick their brain a little bit. And Carson Beck was like, I got to be around Stetson Bennett and JT Daniels and a lot of other guys in that room, Brock Vandegrift even, that I got to pick their brain. I got to kind of play off of them and learn stuff from them. So that leading to this point of me being the starter, and that kind of played a huge role. So the Gunner getting to be around an elite processor like Carson Beck and a guy that is now going to be 2 full year starter in the SEC, that's only going to benefit him.
And the development that we saw behind, and we didn't see it, it was behind closed doors, but the obvious signs of development around Carson would lead you to believe that if you give more time to Gunner to cultivate here, it's ultimately going to turn into a really serviceable starter. Do you have any other questions off of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think an obvious one is, do you think this influences any other decisions? Like Alad McConkey, obviously. That's a guy that feels like maybe on the fence a little bit, maybe leaning more towards the draft, but do you think knowing like, okay, I got number 15 back next year, he's going to be the guy spinning it to me, do you think that influences his decisions or even any other decisions possibly?
So the main influence right here, I would imagine, is Tate Ratledge. Tate, if my memory serves me correctly, Tate and Chad Lindbergh and I want to say Austin Blaschke were Carson Beck's freshman roommates. So they've been boys for a long, long time, that like offensive line trilogy and Carson Beck. Obviously, Blaschke has hit the portal. He's going to North Carolina. I expect Chad Lindbergh to get his graduate's degree and then probably go maybe to like a Ivy League school of some sorts if he doesn't stick around for master's school at Georgia. Brilliant mind. I remember interviewing him coming out of high school, and I sniffed coach immediately. Like, oh, my God, this kid's going to be brilliant. And he's exactly that. He's a brilliant human being. One of my favorite interviews of all time, but we're here to talk about Carson. If his return influences anybody, it's probably Tate. But all its signs indicate Tate Ratledge was probably coming back anyways. Now, the Lad McConkey information. I'm going to preface this one by telling you that these are strictly thoughts and opinions. Agent Brooks hat on again. Here we go. If I were Lad McConkey's agent, his butt would be going to the NFL, and here's why. That dude has been so banged up for 2 straight years, all right? And we all know the physical, I don't even want to call them limitations, the physical realities, all right, with Ladd McConkey. He is a Z receiver. He's going to go to the NFL. He's going to play Z, all right? He might get bumped into the slot, whatever. But he is a booming, explosive wide receiver. He is not a slot weapon. He is not whatever possession receiver, but he sure as shit is built like that. And when you're built like that, you're going to take bigger and more physical and more daunting hits than anybody else that plays your position. We have seen this bore out with him over his time at the University of Georgia. So if I were Ladd McConkey, and I knew for a fact if I spent the next 8 weeks getting really, really healthy, and I went up to Indianapolis, and I would run sub-4 in the 5.10.5, and I would run 4.38, and I would jump 42 inches, my ass would be a 4th-round draft pick this year, and I wouldn't have to worry at all about whether or not my back flares back up, whether or not my knee flares back up, whether or not I get a new sustained injury that I'm now going to have to carry on my career. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, but I do think there is some inklings that Ladd is kind of leaning towards potentially going towards the NFL. But that being said, that kid loves Georgia, as every kid loves Georgia. And nowadays, you ain't coming back for peanut butter sandwiches. You know what I mean? You coming back for a little something. We all know this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've just kind of gotten that feel for every single player that's facing a draft declaration of, like, even the obvious ones of ones we know for a fact are going to the NFL, like a Brock Bowers and a Maurice Mims. Those guys have remained quiet. We continue to talk about this. I think it has a lot to do with, it's a tough decision. Maybe you want to kind of play it off because you don't want to have to finally make that decision. But I think it also has to do with the fact of we freaking love this place and we don't want to leave it, and we don't want to put that mark on, like, we finally have to leave. Another question I have, though, is, like, do you think this affects the quarterback market for the NFL this year at all, or even next year? Like, knowing, like, okay, Carson Beck, he's a second-round draft pick, maybe even first-round draft pick. He's sticking around in college. And, I mean, we've seen Quinn Ewers now make this decision or kind of leave it open to where he is going to come back, and now Carson Beck as well. Knowing that he is coming back, do you think a guy like that is on the fence to say, like, oh, he's coming back, maybe this is my sign to go, or maybe this is a sign for someone else, like, maybe I need to stay as well?
So I think this solidifies Jaden Daniels at QB3. In this draft, you're looking at obviously Caleb Williams, Drake May, and then the debate was whether or not you're looking at guys like Carson, Jaden Daniels. Give me some other names here that have declared. Most of them have come back, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like there's not a whole lot.
The quarterback class got thin really, really quick. Oh, the kid from Tulane, he's in the mix here. Sam Hartman's in the mix here.
J.J. McCarthy, if he declared.
Spencer Rattler's in the mix here. So a lot of names here of guys that, I would imagine Carson would have been highly rated then. Maybe Spencer Rattler's a name that you should be paying attention to here. But here's what I want to kind of like remove from the discussion. This idea that you're going to be a second-round quarterback draft selection just does not happen. You're off air, so do some research on this. I think Jalen Hurts is the only quarterback in the last, 10 drafts to be drafted in the second round. Okay, quarterbacks are first-round picks or they are third-round picks. Second-round draft picks are for selections of position players that were not selected in the first round. You are trying to get a positional starter. You are not drafting backups in that round. And when you're drafting a second-round quarterback, you're normally sliding them to be your backup. No different than what Philly did with Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he was Nick Foles' backup for a little while, or Carson Wentz, who was it? Either way, he was a backup for a little while before he ultimately took that job over. So this idea that, hey, maybe you're a late first-round pick. If you're maybe a late first-round pick, they're basically telling you you're maybe a third-round draft pick based on how the NFL history of the draft works.
So maybe that played, knowing that they're saying, Carson, you're a second-round draft pick, that's what we're projecting you at. Maybe a team wants to take you in the first round, just kind of depending on how the draft goes. Do you think that played a huge role in his decision? Maybe they, knowing that information of, like, even if they tell you you're a second-round draft pick, that doesn't mean you're going to be a second-round draft pick. That probably means you're going to be a third-round draft pick.
Correct. And if I know this, I guarantee you they know this. Okay? You can look it up. I'm almost 100% positive Jalen Hurts is like one of the only ones. Yeah? I'm doing the mic's hot, so you can talk into it.
I'm doing the math right now. Again, this is really quick math, but I think there's probably 60 to 70 quarterbacks since 2007 or 15 that have been selected in the NFL draft. And there's like 5 second-round picks. It's like Jalen Hurts, Deshaun Kaiser, Christian Hackenberg, Will Levis was the one this year that got taken. But I think the percentage is like 3-4%.
Okay, so we're about right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Evan. Shouts out to Evan Crowell, our original producer that nobody ever saw. They're going to get him tonight. Actually, he's been on the show before. He was out there with us in L.A. But anyways, so there you go. Yeah, Drew Lock, guys like that in the second round. Not a lot of hits, by the way. The only hit there sounded like Jalen Hurts and maybe a Will Levis.
Yeah,
We're holding on to a maybe Will Levis.
Yeah,
It looked like it was working until he took a major shot last night or the other night.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked pretty solid, but man, yeah, now that you pointed that out, that is so true. That's an interesting thing to follow. So,
Any more questions on the Beck news? Does this
No.
make him the Heisman contender, like the number one Heisman contender?
I mean, I already put a tweet out saying I think there's a good chance that he's the Heisman favorite next year, but I think it also depends on who all comes back. Like if JJ McCarthy comes back and he goes on and does special things in college football playoff, then I think he's probably going to be your favorite. But I mean, there's so many transfer quarterbacks this year as well, going to new spots, like going to better spots than they were this year, that I think could easily influence the Heisman rankings going into next year.
Dylan Gabriel going to be in the mix out there at Oregon, who just got another quarterback we'll talk about in the national hour, but there's a lot of quarterbacks in new spots. Not a lot of quarterbacks going into year 4 of one system.
Yeah,
That kid's going to know that thing so daggum well. So, yeah, he's going to light it up next year as if he didn't already this year. I got a little something here. I got a lot of people watching. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, and rate, and reviewing. I got to thinking about this today. Never enough, right? That's what I kept telling myself. Never enough. And sometimes it can feel like never enough is a good thing, right? It makes you keep pushing. Like I got a sign on the wall right here that says, great job, do better, right? I text you guys some of this sometimes, right? Great job. You're doing a tremendous job. Great effort. Now, just go do better. Like, that's the only thing you can do is just do better. And I understand it. It's a constant reminder to me that it is never enough. Whatever you're doing, however good you're doing, it's never enough. But, man, I can't lie to you. That shit gets kind of tiring. It gets really, really tiring. And not only taxing in, like, my individual life, like even holding myself to those own standards, but I could not imagine if someone outside of my traditional circle, outside of my influences, right, was out here just judging whether or not it was enough, whether or not my performances were enough. It would make me very, very angry to hold myself to these standards of I'm always trying to be better. And then somebody on the outside, despite how good I'm being or how great I am aspiring to be, somebody on the outside constantly telling me it's never enough. It's never enough. And as a coach, you are the subject of these never enough comments all the time. So you got to kind of be like used to it by now. You got to kind of be hardened to these things. But man, I couldn't imagine being Kirby Smart. I could not imagine being Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart has won the last 2 national titles. All right. That saying will drop down to the last 2 out of the 3 very, very soon. He did so off the backs of really, really elite defenses. I mean, like super elite defenses, like the number 1 defense in the country and like the number 6 defense in the country. Just balling ass defenses. He is a defensive minded coach. He did so with 2 great defensive staffs, both of which, by the way, had 2 different coordinators. Yeah, he won a national title with a great defense with one coordinator. That coordinator left. He turned around, won another national title with another great defensive coordinator. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Nothing but great defenses over and over and over again. And you would think that when a defensive mind with that track record goes out and makes a positional hire like he did this week with Dante Williams, the defensive back coach from USC, it would be met with almost immediate, no hesitation. Great hire. Great job. Guy must got something. Dude must know something. Dude must be something really, really good that they need. No. That was not what my mention showed me. That's not what my Discord showed me. That's not what the internet showed me. The internet showed me that no matter what your track record is, no matter how good you are, what you do, if you hire somebody that was directly associated with some filth, which is what USC's defense was the last 3 years with Dante Williams over there, if you're associated with filth, you automatically get drugged into the filth. When in reality, you probably shouldn't be. All right, and the guy that hired you probably shouldn't be doubted. He definitely shouldn't. Because listen to this, guys. Dante Williams, despite what he did at USC, whatever you want to think about their track record on the field, all right, this dude walked into a room or had a Zoom meeting, whatever the freaking interview process was. He walked into a room with Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, and Glenn Schumann and left that bitch with a job. Those 3 defensive minds are some of the best defensive minds in the sport. And we got people on the Twitter machines still doing it ain't never good enough. It ain't never good enough. The track record doesn't matter. Whatever you hire, their stain comes with them, despite how good you are. And when I texted people about this, like, hey, I don't need explanations, but my listeners do. And the immediate response I got was, shut up, like not shut up, but like what else do we have to do to completely garner just 100% no doubt about any situation? This situation, all right? The defensive backs coaching job? Are you serious? Like that dude that walked into that room had to be something special because there's 3 brilliant defensive back minds in that room. So that one to me was a little bit wild. And again, it's not everybody, it's not always, but there's always somebody that's out there going, really? We just hired the USC guy. What the hell?
I mean, let's just think back of some of the hires that have been questioned that Kirby Smart has made. Stacey Searles comes to mind. He was at UNC. Yeah, you did that one. A lot of people.
Sorry, Stacey, I did that.
And for good reason, because his numbers, the offensive line numbers at UNC were not very good. They were pretty atrocious. And so it's like, why are we hiring this guy? Now you fast forward, Stacey Searles doing a great job. Fran Brown even was kind of like this because, like, why are we getting a dude from Rutgers? Like, why are we poaching from their coaching staff? Then it's like, oh, that Fran Brown dude, he's a dude. Mike Bobo was questioned coming into this year because it was like, oh, he burnt out at Georgia, didn't really do anything at Colorado State, this, that. And then he comes out and produces nearly a 40 points per game season. So all these coaching hires that have been questioned under Kirby Smart, they have more than been answered, and they've produced great results.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Again, I get it. Like, you see the USC stuff and a defensive coach, like, you immediately associate it with, like, really, really bad performances. Mm-hmm. And then you find out that he's landed, I think, 6 5-stars in 3 years. 6 5-stars at USC. By the way, one of those years he's landed 5 stars with a coaching transition in between Clay Helton and Lincoln Riley, and also doing that on the defensive side of the football under Lincoln Riley, which I would imagine those are the only 5-star defensive commits that Lincoln Riley may have ever signed.
Yeah,
in his career.
It's got to be. I mean, so I think it's looking in the wrong place almost. Like, you're looking at the on-field results, and you know what? That's okay. You don't necessarily need a guy that's going to be producing on-field results at the defensive back position at Georgia because you have plenty of other guys that can do that can train guys up, that can develop them. You need a guy that can go out and recruit across the country, get guys into that room that you can then develop into even better football players. I mean, that's essentially what Fran Brown was. Now, Fran Brown was a great football mind. We came to know that through the stories that you told on this show. But, I mean, you really just need a guy like, go get the dudes, we'll do the rest. That's all you really need.
And that's exactly what it sounds like this guy is. He's an elite recruiter, okay? Just like maybe one of the better ones. Now, Fran was almost untouchable. I think we're learning that now with the Syracuse ability to recruit. He was like the creme de la creme, homie, top shelf, you know, when it comes to recruiting. This guy sounds like he's maybe a step down, but it sounds like he's also an elite man-to-man developer. And I'm just going to go ahead and let you know, Ellis Robinson is the best man-to-man cover evaluation corner I've ever seen, ever. There ain't nothing better than that. That kid's 6'1". He's got arms like a daggum bald eagle, all right, and his ability to walk down and press bumper and play bump and run. Whew. So, yeah, the pairings are elite, you know, in terms of this guy's great at this newfound 5-star that everyone in that building believes is going to be the next one is also going to be an elite cover guy, man-to-man.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even really think of a hire that Kirby Smart has made during his time at Georgia, really outside of maybe a couple, maybe 2 or 3, that you've been like, okay, that one didn't work out. That one was kind of a miss. I think really since like 2020, any hire that Kirby Smart has made during his time as a head coach have been pretty much nail on the head. You nailed that one.
The only one I want to to, I think he missed on Jamal Adai.
Yeah.
The corners coach that was at
West Virginia,
and then came down to Georgia for 10 months, and then went to Miami, and then he missed on James Coley.
Yeah, those were the 2 that came to my mind.
Those 2 guys.
Yeah, that's it.
But other than that, everything else has been clean as a whistle. I think some people would point to his very first offensive coordinator hire,
Chaney,
and they'd say, but from my understanding, I wasn't covering the team then, but from my understanding, he hired the 2 most like veteran coordinators that he could possibly get to make sure I can, you know, handle all the stuff that I'm not ready to handle yet before he cleaned, you know, house, essentially. Didn't clean house, but guys left for jobs.
Yeah, I mean, plus in that Chaney era, I mean, you really not a whole lot of responsibility was put on Chaney's shoulders because Kirby Smart said himself, I mean, you had Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. Your job as a coordinator at that point is, let's get those dudes the ball and just let them run around the field for 4 quarters and see if we can come out with a win, and then try and work in this Eason guy that we got and maybe let him develop a little bit.
Run the dang ball, Bert.
Basically.
A little situation like that. Any more thoughts on this news here with this defensive back hire?
No, I'm good.
I think I'm good on that one. It's never enough. I understand it. I get it. I am someone who, you know, constantly striving for a little bit better. but jeez, give the guy a break, man. Let the guy breathe a little bit. Hey, good news for Georgia fans this past weekend. Sounds like Smile Mondon hasn't officially been announced from his camp, but all signs and sources pointing to Smile Mondon returning next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's great news following the news that we got prior to that, of course, with Pop entering the portal, and it's like, geez. And then initially it seemed like, okay, well, if he's leaving, then it seems like Munden's definitely going to leave as well. Yeah. And now you get him back, along with everything that we've heard about this young linebacker core, of what we saw from C.J. Allen, what we know about Raylan Wilson, what we know about these other guys that are in that room. Getting a veteran like Munden to come back, that buys you. It's almost like the same discussion of the Carson Beck thing, where you're buying an extra year for Gunnar Stockton, you're buying an extra year for a lot of those young guys as well, where they're only going to get better under a guy like Glenn Schumann, who's a mastermind at that position. So really huge news for Georgia.
Absolutely. When the JDJ stuff hit, we were on show going, we don't know if Smiles going to come back, but if he didn't, right, and they're great football players, but like Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen starting as a redshirt freshman. Raylan played a lot of football this year, so he'd be a sophomore. But starting two sophomores would be no different than what they had to do in 2021 when Smile and Pop were the two starters after Quay and Channing and N'Kobe left. So this is kind of a situation where, you got JDJ and Pop and Smile, and guess what? The junior and N'Kobe would have came back. Like that's basically what you just got. You got a second round, third round linebacker, which is what my sourcing tells me. His evaluation was middle of the third round, maybe bottom into second, depending on how well you test. He decided to come back to chase a chance at a first-round evaluation if he plays. If he puts on tape what Quay Walker put on tape his senior year, which is a very strong possibility. Like Smile has that type of ceiling, and I don't think a lot of people realize he played hurt a long time this year. My sources indicated it was like Ole Miss. Ole Miss football game had something go wrong in it, a foot in his foot, and kind of hobbled through the rest of the season at about 60-65%. Even though he has announced he's coming back, I don't expect him to play in the bowl game. I expect those young linebackers to get a bunch of run, but him coming back is tremendous news.
Yes, and same discussion that we had with the offense of Carson Beck now coming back. Interesting to see who else is going to follow him on the offense side of the football. Now that Munden's coming back, it's interesting to see who else is going to come back. I think it's been interesting kind of follow along Tyke Smith's Twitter lately.
And Bull.
Man, he very much it's just emojis, so you can read into however you want. But like every single decision, it's like, oh, you broke my heart. And then like when there was reports that he was coming back and Carson Beck, it's like, man, let's ride. Let's do this again. So maybe it seems like he's coming back. Maybe Bullard as well. He did some stuff on social media as well. I hate doing the social media thing, but it's worth noting at least a little bit.
I love Javon Bullard is one of my favorite players to ever evaluate. I'm also smart enough to know I think he knows what he's doing there. Which is pulling on some heartstrings. Every time he does that, people get really, really excited. Yeah. But this is the same guy that tweeted basically a thank you note, and then 2 days later tweeted a bulldog emoji, and he's been doing this, and this. And here's the thing. I think I've said this on air here. Bullard, of all these guys, is the one, from my understanding, is like really, really delaying this conversation. He doesn't want to have it. He doesn't want to have to make the decision of whether or not he's going to the league or whether or not he's coming back for his senior year, because his evaluation is really, really tough. He has first-round film. There is no doubt about that. He has first-round stats. He has first-round impact. He has first-round in-person evaluations, except he has like fourth, maybe fifth-round physical attributes. Okay, this is a guy who's going to measure in around 5'11", around 190 pounds, and he's going to run like 4.65. That's not ever going to get drafted in the first round. I don't care how good your tape is. They draft Kyle Hamilton's in the first round, baby. They draft Malachi Starks's in the first round, dog. They do not draft Chris Smith's in the first round. They just don't. No matter how long that guy's going to play in the league, Chris Smith's going to survive in the NFL way past pension because he's a great football player. Javon Bullard going to outplay any of the issues, questions, comments, concerns that they have about him right now during his college football or during his professional football career. It's a matter of whether or not you decide to come back for a fourth year to improve what sounds to be like a third, fourth round draft evaluation and do it for a fourth year, 3.5 years as a starter, and do it for 3.5 years in the SEC and just play your way into a second round evaluation. I just don't see how this goes from we think he's a third rounder coach because of these physical limitations to him playing his way into a first-round evaluation next year. This, to me, would be a very similar conversation. Again, Agent Brooks, and I know people hate to hear this because this is a Georgia fan base listening tonight mostly. This is a conversation. If I were Agent Brooks, I would have the inverse talk that I had with Ladd. I would say, Ladd, baby, you've been banged up. We got to go. And I would say, Javon, you play like the Honey Badger, and you got out of here with nothing. If we leave today, you have no injuries. We don't even have to go through the gauntlet at the combine. They ain't going to red flag you. They ain't going to have no comments about your knees, your shoulders, your neck, nothing. You got out of here unscathed at 5'11", and you played like a dog for 3.5 years. It's time. That would be my sentiment to him. But if you're Georgia, this is, of all the football players, this is the one you really can't lose. Though I believe in David Daniel-Sisavon, though I believe in Jonell Aguero, though I believe in Justin Rhett, boy, it sure would look a lot better if 22 is coming back next year in that back end.
Yeah, it definitely would help out the depth back there. I mean, the questions this year with Bullard already in that room, with Starks already there and whatnot, I mean, it was a conversation of we are one injury away from, oh, crap, like we really got to figure some things out. We got to start working Dan Jackson around. We saw that at the beginning of the year, actually. I think it was the Auburn week where I can't remember who it was that was banged up. It may have been Bullard.
It was Bull.
It was Bullard. And they were just kind of like, we got to figure some things out. We're going to play David Daniel-Sisavon quite a bit. We're going to play Dan Jackson quite a bit as well. We're just going to try and figure things out, get through this week to where we can get 22 back on the field. Next year, it would be, now we got to do that for a full season. We got to get these guys ready. So I think he would be the biggest returnee if that were to happen of like, okay, things are really settling in for Georgia. And now they're really pushing things forward.
In the scarlet and cream where legacies entwine, Dylan, like Rodgers, Rozier, and Crouch, a hero in the line. Oh, man. That's great stuff. So these draft declarations, they haven't happened yet. There's still a lot of questions. Still don't know what's happening with Brock Bowers. Every day we linger, I'm like, is he crazy? Is he crazy?
He is crazy.
He is crazy. He did come back 26 days, shorter time than anybody else in high ankle sprain history. And I don't know if I've told the story on air, but they have genuinely no idea of how good he is. They just love football. The whole camp is like completely ignorant, and the ignorance, the wrong term. It's the only way. It lacks knowledge. They lack genuine knowledge of how great this football player is. He just loves working. He just loves ball. I genuinely think if you told him, we will pay your expenses the rest of your life, but you don't make any money playing football, I think he would just do it. I think he would. I think he loves football that much, and he's just not like normal people. And I think that's why this is taking so long. I think his agency and his group and his people around him, and this is me thinking. It's not me telling you. I think people are having to convince him to leave. I think they're having to tell him, you need to go, son. It's not selfish. You need to go.
I mean, we literally watched him hobble around Mercedes-Benz Stadium for 4 quarters and like literally have to pull himself up with every bit of strength every single time he was knocked down and continue to fight through. Him and Ladd both, but really Brock. I mean, there was a point in time in that football game where Brock Bowers went down and everybody was like, whoa. I mean, you saw the tape that was on his ankles going up into that game. It was like, dude, what are we doing? Like, this is a little much. You're 4 months away from making the most money in your entire life and basically setting yourself up for the rest of your life and starting a whole new career. And I mean, you're going to go down as one of the greatest ever to do it at the college level. Like, it's okay to move on, but man, I mean, if there, it's always like, it's obvious that he is going, but then at the same time, you have that thought of like, but Brock Bowers is never as predictable as you think he is.
No. And I also don't think anybody can control him. I don't think there's any, if your advice is we want to protect you or we want safety for you, we've already found out that's the number one way to make sure you're not representing this guy, right? When he got hurt against Vandy, I tweeted out immediately, you want to lose your job as Brock Bowers' agent? Suggest he not play. Suggest he not come back. And I tweeted about it jokingly, but seriously, knowing the individual. And come to find out, that's exactly what happened. There were guys and agents that thought that they had a chance to represent this dude, and they told him, you don't need to be playing. You need to sit it out. You're going to the draft. You need to go to the draft. Don't come back. And Kirby Smart said those people will not be representing this individual. He is very, very much so cut different. That being said, take your ass to the NFL, son. I think they're having the same conversations about seriously, no, you don't even need to be playing in the bowl game with Kamari Lassiter. I think Kamari Lassiter wants to play in this football game. I think a small portion of Kamari Lassiter thinks he needs to come back. Like, leaving Georgia way harder than I thought it would ever be for first-round evaluations. That being said, I think Amarius Mims is gone.
Yeah.
I think Amarius Mims is gone.
Yeah, that one seems like one is like, okay, yeah, we're expecting Amarius Mims to go just kind of based on how his career at Georgia has gone and just kind of like entering the portal, coming back. And it's like, all right, just knowing the talent that he has and knowing how offensive linemen fare, especially people like him, his size, his measurables, everything in an NFL draft stage and combine, like that dude's going to crush it.
You know who knows he's a freak? Amarius Mims.
Yeah.
Amarius Mims knows he's been sculpted by the one above. All right. Amarius Mims, I got his officials the other day. Amarius Mims is 6'8", 330 pounds. And at the NFL Combine, he'll probably be at near or under 10% body fat. And he'll have 38-inch arms. That guy is –
that's unfair.
I mean, God made him to play left tackle. And you know what's going to happen? He's going to, quote-unquote, fall to 16, and the Eagles are going to draft him or wherever the Eagles are at, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer. That's what's going to happen because it's going to take the right organization to draft that kid. And, yeah, that's it. That's over with. He has some of the best tape I've ever seen from a guy who plays 65% effort. That's about it. All right, the Ohio State, I don't even want to say it's that low. It's about 75%, but he does not play full tilt ever, not once. Go turn the Ohio State tape on. He is ragdolling, okay, NFL football players, ragdolling them, all right, at about 85% effort. He just out there getting it done, baby. It was very akin to Broderick Jones doing it with zero tech. Broderick Jones got thrown into a national championship game against Will Anderson and was just like, all right, for 4 quarters, I'm going to keep this rabbit in front of me, however I can do it. And that's exactly what he did with the just absolute horrible technique. But he's touched by the gods, and that's the way this kid is. So he needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I would like I think tackles are the second highest paid person on an NFL football team. So absolutely, go get your bread, son. You've absolutely earned it. But just the fact that you just said 65% he's going to be first-round draft pick. I remember after the first national championship coming home to Athens and driving around, and there's this car in front of me like a few spots ahead, and it's like blasting music, having a good time, whatever, and I pull up, and it says Mims 65 on the back of it. And But he was just vibing. Absolutely knows who he is.
I'm going to tell you this, and this might be the caucasity in me, but if I were 6'8", ain't no way I'm squeezing into a Hellcat. You can get out of here thinking I'm squeezing into a sports car. I'm just not. I don't care how good they sound. I don't care how fast they drive. My ass going to be in a Raptor. My ass going to be in a Tundra. I'm going to be in something that says, let the big dog eat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that screams you for sure.
Yeah, it does. Compensating, I think is what people say about that kind of thing. I think Florida State's going to get doggy stomped.
Dude,
I
think it's going to be bad. I mean, I jokingly said that maybe in the bowl game they'll just run the Wildcat formation because that's kind of what they did in the ACC championship game with Trey Benson. But now you don't even have Trey Benson because he's declared for the NFL draft, and he is opting out of the bowl game as well. So that leaves you without Benson, without Johnny Wilson, and then Verse, we're kind of questioning of what's going to happen, but we think we know what's going to happen. Keon Coleman seems like someone that's definitely going to opt out of this game, and no quarterback.
Bell.
Yeah, no Jaheim Bell. It's going to be ugly.
Yeah, they are playing without a backup quarterback and probably 4 or 5 offensive starters. And I seen video of Jared Verse getting into a fight on the street down there in Tallahassee. So I would imagine his agents calling him and telling him, hey, it's time to get to Arizona. We got a combine to train for. Let's go ahead and get up out of there. So
do you think that's kind of telling of like how important structure and schedules are for some kids? Because it's like – just thinking about like throughout college careers, like you don't really hear about much, but then it's like you get into this off-season time and they're going up to the NFL Combine. That's typically when it feels like things happen, unfortunately for them. Like, I don't know.
No, I mean, you're right in the sense that was a football team that was playing for everything, and now they're playing for nothing, or it feels like nothing to a lot of those individuals. So Reese Davis said it on the broadcast as soon as they got announced as the 5th team. Now we'll find out what the leadership capabilities of Mike Norvell is. That's what he said. Now, I'm not saying this is Mike Norvell's fault, but and it could happen tomorrow, but I don't see videos of a lot of college football programs, best players out in the street fighting.
Yeah.
Now, again, probably happens at a litany of places. I think the most famous video recently was that Oklahoma wide receiver that got just absolutely dotted by 2 UFC fighters in a bar out in Oklahoma. I mean, just absolutely lit up. I think one guy left with a broken jaw. It was bad. But that, nowadays, I just don't. I don't see. You live in Athens. How many football players do you see roaming around downtown?
I mean, very rarely.
Yeah.
Like once on occasion, and it's nothing like you typically would be doing downtown. It's
We do the mic'd up sessions after the show, and I might see 3 or 4.
maybe.
But it ain't like, they're rolling up deep.
No. Yeah,
Nowadays, I think most of that stuff's off, off Broad Street.
Yeah,
Let's just
for
call
sure.
it that way. But yeah, no, this Florida State unit is approaching this again like they have nothing to play for. And when we went through the list of Georgia players that are not opting out but have elected to play in this football game, Georgia looks like the ones that are ready to go out and play for a national title.
Yeah, I mean, the line is still at -14. I'm very interested to see how high that is going to get because we continue to see Florida State players opt out. We have not yet heard of any Georgia player opting out of the bowl game yet. And especially defensively, it seems like Georgia's going to have a lot of their strength. And even if they have these young guys, it's not like these young guys are going to be running around with their head cut off or anything by any of that means. So I think I said it 2 weeks ago. I was like, I pray for this Florida State offense because for what Georgia's about to do to them and what's about to happen to them because it's not going to be good.
More likely to happen. Florida State doesn't play at all. They do the chaos, or they score an offensive touchdown.
They don't play at all. That seems like the more likely scenario right now. I think so, yeah.
I mean, we saw them at what their version of full strength against Louisville, who is considerably worse than Georgia defensively. Like maybe 20 spots just on the rankings, just on stats. But if you took them Jimmy for Joe, it's considerably better, all right? And they struggled. They had one 80-yard explosive in the run game out of the Wildcat. And out of that, I think it was a short field goal, and that was it. And maybe a turnover they gave him a short field, but that ain't going to be it, man. That ain't going to be it this coming up week.
Yeah, not only was that Florida State fully manned with what they had healthy, that was Florida State playing with a purpose, playing for a reason, and everything's pointing to them playing not fully manned and also not playing for any reason or purpose against a team that feels like they still have something to play for. They certainly feel like they have something to play for. Their starting quarterback feels like he's got something to play for. So does the rest of this team. So I think it's just going to be an absolute manslaughter in this football game.
Yeah, I think Georgia wins by 3 touchdowns. And then calls off the dogs. But A.J. Harris hit the portal this weekend. I think it's worth talking about here as we close the local hour before we head on to the national hour. Look, it's about to be Spin Zone. It's going to sound like Spin Zone. I feel like some of these announcements I've had to come on here and give you the reality, and sometimes it feels like, hey, Georgia beat reporter guy out here spinning it and giving us the fake news or whatever, or the better news, and telling us everything's okay as he rubs our head. But this is the reality, okay? It's never good when a 5-star freshman spends 10 months on your campus and hits the portal. It's never, ever a good thing. It's always going to frustrate. It's going to frustrate fans. It's going to frustrate coaches. It's damn sure going to frustrate the people that put 5-star rankings on these individuals. But I think this is going to happen to Georgia and more often in the future, okay? Players that they recruited heavily, all right, that got to campus, and I'm not to say didn't pan out, but for whatever reason did not work out here, and they have gone elsewhere immediately and have been not poached, but have selected to take their talents and go elsewhere and put those talents to work immediately, okay? And corner, specifically at corner, this is going to happen a whole hell of a lot more often than – and I want you guys to be prepared for this, where highly touted kid comes in, highly touted kid leaves very, very early because the writing is on the wall, and here's what I mean by that. Kamari Lassiter, Dalen Everett, Julian Humphrey, Nyland Green, Daniel Harris. Okay, those were the football players. And by the way, only one of those was destined to leave for the draft this year, so we believe. Those were the football players by the end of the year that were ahead of him at a spot that only plays 2. Listen to that. Kamari Lassiter, he's gone. Dalen Everett's coming back. Julian Humphrey, coming back for right now, right? There's been a lot of smoke there. Don't think it's going to happen. Coming back. Nyland Green in the portal now, so he's off the list. All right, Daniel Harris, for those of you who don't know about Daniel Harris, you ain't been listening to the network since August, because when they let us have in-person evaluations, I came back dangum drooling over this kid, didn't I? 6'2", 205 pounds, longer than piss, okay, and moves. moves like he's supposed to, physically developed like he's supposed to. By the way, was a Fran Brown take, was a football player down in Florida that Fran Brown said, Coach, I got to have because I don't know what this might turn into. All right, and it sounded like it's going to turn into something. So, and by the way, Ellis Robinson, we just talked about him. He's about to be on campus, I think, tomorrow, okay? And, by the way, Chris Peel, in his signing class, tremendously talented. He's a 10-3 runner. You know who isn't a 10-3 runner? A.J. Harris. A.J. Harris was about physicality. A.J. Harris was about technique. A.J. Harris was about doing everything right. A.J. Harris was physically gifted to an extent, but he was not some of these football players in the room. Oh, by the way, Andre Evans is one of those. He's coming in this class as well. So this is a position group at Georgia that right now runs about 8 deep. 8 deep that are as good or look to be as good or will be as good or better than A.J. Harris. So if that is the case and somebody is calling your phone and saying, son, I know you want to wait it out 18 months to find out if you're the guy there that will ultimately be the next first-round draft pick at Georgia, but we're going to give you the opportunity to do that right meow on our football team that needs you. And, by the way, we might give you a pay raise for doing so. When that happens, guys, you're going to have these football players just elect to go because the writing, again, is on the wall. I don't care how good you are. If you think you're going to out-practice the 7 other talented people that are in front of you right now, day one, and your goal or your plan or your must-have is to play this fall, then you need to hit the portal.
I mean, another thing too, for just to take a step back from that outlook is, Georgia brings in a litany of defensive backs, or at least they have for the past few classes of just immensely talented. You rattled off several names down the list, and so it gets deep real quick, and you can get buried in that depth chart very quickly as well, and especially on a team that does not rotate defensive back very often like they do most defensive positions.
I didn't even talk about Kyron Jones. Like they got a bunch of them, man. That's all I'm trying to say. And I don't like to do the kids dodging competition. I like to put it this way. If you're 7th on the depth chart and or you're 7th in line to be a partner at your next firm or whatever the hell your situation is, if you're 7th in line, if you're the 7th most conservative like our man that we talked about the other day, whatever, if you're 7th in line, all right, and someone gives you the opportunity to be 2nd in line and get a pay raise, your ass is going. You're going. And stop saying you're not. All right, so I don't hate these kids for these kind of things. I don't downgrade them for these types of things. What was our man's name? Our senator's name? Do we remember?
Colton Moore.
Colton Moore. Shouts out. UGA grad.
How about him?
Cleaning up stalls. Mm-hmm. You got to go back and listen to that one. Not to say it was some of our best work, but I had a good chuckle.
Yeah.
A good chuckle. My sister, fun fact, worked with Colton Moore. I'll tell you that story after this. Anyways. It's not the place to be getting passed up on at this position at the cornerback spot, right? So from now on, either 5 stars need to look like 5 stars early at your program, or 5 stars will be getting poached by other programs early at your program. Okay, we just saw it happen with Marvin Jones Jr. as well. Before we talk about Marvin Jones and move on into our national topics, A.J. Harris, as soon as he was in the portal, officially was on a visit to Auburn, as was Jamon Dumas-Johnson. Thoughts on that kind of pairing if that were to be the case?
It definitely make the Auburn game at Georgia very interesting next year. Both of those guys do end up at Auburn. Just kind of especially interesting because it seemed like when JDJ hit the portal, the immediate link was like, oh, maybe that's going to be at Syracuse. Go follow a defensive coach. Go play there. Maybe try and up your draft stock. But then, especially when a school like Auburn gets in the mix and we know what Auburn is about and we know what they can do, that makes the hair on your neck stand up a little bit as a Georgia fan.
The assets are not frozen. Mm-hmm. The assets are working out there on the plains. Ethan gave us a little tidbit before the show. Shouts out to Ethan over there. JDJ's on a visit to Kentucky as well. So it sounds like he's going to take the rounds. Also sounds like he's a highly coveted football player, as you would imagine he was going to be. Kentucky, heavy players. Heavy players in the market this year. Not as heavy as Ole Miss, who we're going to talk about tonight, but a heavy player.
I would be a heavy player, too, in the portal if I was Kentucky, knowing I got Brock Vandergeer for the next 2 years. And it's like we have a 2-year window, it seems like, to maybe try and break the ceiling that we've had the last 2 years of we're an 8-9 win team. Maybe we can get into 10-11 wins, but it's going to be difficult with this new schedule format. But I would definitely be trying to build up that roster as much as I possibly could for the next 2 years.
It's never a good idea to break the seal. You want to wait. Wait as long as you can before you break the seal, so I'm told. I think that's good on the local hour. Will you tell my man how to hit that intro so we can send it into NBR? Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to NBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up? You really like that? What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back in for our second hour here. This is our national hour, okay? So if you hung out with us and listened to our local hour, give us an opportunity to be your home for national college football conversation right here, right now. All right, you already set through 60. Give me another 60. All right, second half football team right here for you guys. That boy Lane is cooking. The Lane train is rolling on the transfer portal trail. Tamarian McDonald, a safety from Tennessee. Tyler Barron, a defensive end from Tennessee. Princely, Uman Milan, a defensive end from Florida. Keen Lawrence, a safety from Oklahoma. Tavian Nicholson, a corner from Illinois. Antoine Juice Wells, formerly of James Madison, then of USC Junior, now of Ole Miss. Prior to the show, they were favorites to land Walter Nolan. I would consider them still favorites to win Walter Nolan, despite the fact that Georgia seemingly is making a late push for that commitment of that former number one overall transfer from Tennessee, originally from the state of Tennessee, played his freshman year at Texas A&M, now in the portal, leaning towards Ole Miss, it sounds like. But again, there is some stuff leaning towards Georgia. I want to welcome in the boys, Jay Will, and our boy Evan Crowell, who is not a stranger to this network. He joined us out there in July when we were out for the Elite 11. So welcome the boys in. How we doing tonight?
Doing fantastic. Doing good.
Loving it. Loving life. Thanks for having me, you two. You got superstars in the building right now. I'm on it.
My boy sat dormant for an hour, just waiting to cook. Shouts out to Evan. He actually is our lead writer over on our Tennessee site, and he does a tremendous job. So glad to have him in tonight. Our boy Christian Kirby taking the night off. I felt I was going to let you cook for an hour because we let him sit in a solo seat while you were gone. So we'll let you get an hour and cook. I thought you did a tremendous job. But let's talk about this. Look, man, Portal King Lane, which is what he is doing right now. Portal King Lane only happens. I truly believe this. It only happens if he were 10-2 this year. If that football team did not look like it was a defensive game changer or a group of defensive game changers away for competing for the SEC West, I don't believe this would happen. All right. So Lane's ability to get that program into the right kind of timing window and then convincing his booster base to really, really invest in this championship window was brilliant. It is the definition of roster management at a program like this. He has been very forthcoming about the fact that they are not a football program that is going to recruit at an elite level at the high school level. They just won't. I don't know if you've been to Oxford, Mississippi. Oxford's great. Well, there ain't shit within like 3 hours of Oxford. Just ain't nothing. All right, it's out there. It's out there in Mississippi. It is what it is. So the idea that you are going to win head-to-head battles, no matter how cool you are, no matter how cute your dog is, no matter how awesome your Twitter account is, the fact that you're going to win recruiting battles on the high school level with the likes of Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, those just aren't reasonable. He's never approached it that way. He has never approached his board that way, except for when there's a monster in his state or near his state. At that point, he will fully invest in that football player. But everything else about this transition for Ole Miss since the portal has been activated has been about getting difference makers from other places to decide that they want to come here. And last year, it was we're going to add a bunch of mid-major guys that we know can play football. They took like 18 transfers last year, and a good majority of them are guys from mid-major programs that were all conference or all American, and they wanted an opportunity at the SEC level. That's exactly what they got, and guess what? That defense slowly started to turn around under Pete Golden, and now they are primed and positioned to look at an SEC West with a really, really favorable schedule, okay, and just add a several group of difference makers. Get Trey Harris to come back, convince Jackson Dart to come back, and now all of a sudden, boys, on paper, what are they, second best team in the West?
Yeah, it sure seems like it. I think the big thing for me that I've learned from the transfer portal over the past few years is it's not only important to utilize it to where it benefits you, but I think timing and how you use it is also important as well. Like, It's one thing to just go out there and get transfer portal kids every single year, like schools like South Carolina are having to do right now. Ole Miss has kind of done this, but Ole Miss is doing it in a manner where it's like, we know when our window is. We know when we have Jackson Dart coming back and Quinshon Judkins and Harris and whatnot. That's our time to push, and that we have some other guys that can build around them to where we can actually be the top of the East and actually compete.
One thing I've enjoyed about the transfer portal just since its inception is that unlike baseball or basketball or any of those other sports out there, the head coaching position is so important because you are relating to 70 to 80 alpha males, especially in the SEC. You're trying to talk to people that have been the best at for 18 years, 19 years. These transfer guys have been around for 21 years. They've been the Juice Wells, best player on that South Carolina team 2 years ago. And Lane Kiffin's ability, I think, to tell these young men that are in the transfer portal that have probably hit a hard stop along the road. They're talented, but it hasn't maybe gone their way. He can go. That happened for me. I was at Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
I was at USC. Everyone was out on Lane Kiffin. This is my second home. This was my reclamation project. Look what I am now. That ability to say, I'm a coach, but I've been in your shoes, I think that's really selling with all these kids.
He does have a redemption story. And he's talked about how when guys decide that they're going to Ole Miss out of the transfer portal, that is a business decision. That is not about clout. That is not about the fun festivities that come with being an Ole Miss Rebel. That has everything to do with the fact that this is a calculated business decision. I'm going to go, for lack of a better term, suck it up. I mean, it's SEC football. They're brilliant facilities. It is the upper echelon of what college football is made available to you. But it is not LSU. It is not Georgia. It is not Alabama. It is not Tennessee. It is not these schools with regards to access, with regards to facilities, with regards to funds, with regards to all of these things traditionally. However, there is clearly some booster money in that program or around that program, and it just needs a spark. It just needs a little fire. I think we saw this with Auburn as well. We saw that kind of floodgate open. It seemed like as soon as Hugh Freeze took over and got things rolling there, now you see them in the mix with heavy, big-time recruitments, still trying to flip Ryan Williams and KJ Bolden. Guess what? Those things do not come cheaply. They require time and money and investment nowadays on the recruiting trail. So we've seen what happens when these types of programs get flushed with cash, if you will. Not to say that that's the case here, but he has done a tremendous job. I mean, these are ball players, dude. Tyler Barron was one of the best defensive ends in the conference. So was Princely Uman Milan. Like, those are difference makers. Juice Wells, when he gets his foot right, that kid's elite. Like, he's going to really change their offense and how they go about their screen game and their explosivity. I mean, Tamarian McDonald was no slouch at Tennessee either. These are difference makers from Power 5 football programs that he's pulling in.
Yeah, what does that 2024 schedule look like for them?
Oh, my God, dude. It is an absolute cakewalk. Furman, Middle Tennessee State, at Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky. Right off the rip, they're 5-0. At South Carolina, 6-0. And then they don't have a top 25 matchup. I would presume none of those are top 25 football teams, right? The only one might be Kentucky. Maybe. All right, but none of those are top 25 preseason football teams except for at LSU, October 12th. And then they play Oklahoma at home after a bye week, and then they got at Arkansas, and then they play Georgia at home. Then they have another bye week. They go to Florida, and then they close the year with Mississippi State. I see two tough football games on there that they won't be favored by, right? They won't be favored on the road at LSU. Well, actually, Garrett Nussmeier depends on what happens there, right? So we're going to put a question mark on that, and they won't be favored against Georgia, right? You would imagine, even though they're at home. So let's call that like a -4 spread. You would imagine, depending on what Georgia looks like that point in the year. Maybe they're even there's a chance Georgia's a 2-loss football team at that point in the season.
Yeah, I mean,
they got Alabama and Texas on the schedule before.
Very strong possibility. I mean, again, that goes into the timing of all of this, of like knowing when it's time to push, knowing when it's time to literally push all of your chips in on some of the talent that is coming into the transfer portal, knowing that your window is 2024. It seems like, I mean, compared to the other SEC schedules that some of these teams got, that is an absolute breeze.
They got no Bama, they got no Texas. Like that is a breeze. LSU, Georgia, and Oklahoma. Those are the 3 football games next year. They're going to play a freshman. You would imagine by the time they go to Gainesville, right? I would imagine DJ Lagway starting over Graham Mertz towards the end of the year, right?
So?
It depends. Are they a winning football team? If Florida, because they got a brutal one too. If Florida's 5-7 come that football game, you think Graham Mertz is playing over the 5-star?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's a question we don't have to answer right now. I'm just saying there's a possibility late in the season that Florida's like doing what they did this year, playing for a bowl, which we've been on the Billy train. I slightly believe in Billy, even though every once in a while it's like a heart rate monitor, it feels like with him. I believe he's a good football coach. That being said, we all know what that schedule is. We all know what that roster still looks like. They're still very young. So we counted them out this year. We didn't think they were going to get bowl eligible. They didn't. But we thought it was going to be way uglier than it ended up being, even though there were some weeks where Florida looked really bad.
Yeah. Good on Lane and them for that, man.
Shouts out to Lane Kiffin. It's a winnable schedule. Go do it. Just don't beat Georgia because I don't want to listen to my chat doing that. Hey, welcome to tonight's show. We got a loaded one for you. We're going to be talking about Kyle McCord's new home. Shouts out to the Syracuse Orangemen. We're going to talk about Malachi Nelson hitting the portal. Chip Kelly has all the fixes in the world for college football, even though we kind of heard most of those fixings from our boy Charlie Baker. Y'all don't want to hear that, though. Bama versus Michigan, I got some thoughts and an update on that one. KJ Jefferson finally hit the portal. Damani Jackson finally in the portal. But I want to ask you guys real quick, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, rating, reviewing, all that good stuff. If you miss any portion of tonight's broadcast, it can and will be made available for you on all of your podcast platforms, whether that be Spotify, Apple iTunes, however you get your podcast, you will find us. Make sure you are subscribing over there and giving us that 5-star review. That's how we go up those boards. Make sure you're subscribing to here. We are on the road to 20,000 subscribers, and boys, we are close. Don't know what I'm going to get us, but we're going to get gifts all around. We're going to get gifts all around. Maybe they're like specialized hats. Maybe they're a little sticker. I don't know. Can't be breaking the bank, but we're going to do something. I'm definitely buying a pair of J's because 13,000 of those were earned by yours truly. You guys got the last 7, so we'll get you something nice for that. But your boy definitely buying a pair of kicks.
Free and college student go hand in hand, so no complaints here regardless of what
Hell
it is.
yeah. I love that. I love that a lot. But no, we do got a loaded show for you guys tonight. Make sure you're heading over to prizepicks.com using promo code Brooks. You get a 100% deposit match over there with those guys. That's our friend. Those are our friends. Those are our family over there at PrizePicks. So if you like what we do, all right, make sure you're supporting those who support us in order for us to continue this great content strategy that we got going for you guys. I want to talk about this Kyle McCord stuff to Syracuse. We knew it was likely a pairing last week when we talked about it. We actually mentioned it in the show, mentioned it was probably a done deal, and it winds up being a done deal. Now it is official. He will be with Syracuse next year and playing for Fran Brown. I was asking around today because I don't know. I don't know what Fran Brown's going to be running. I don't know nothing about his offensive coordinator, Jeff Nixon, the former running backs coach from the New York Giants. I don't know if he's got a history of calling plays. I would imagine maybe not. Position coach in the NFL coming to be an offensive coordinator. I do know that when they were asked, hey, coach, what offense you going to be running, the answer was whatever the defense can't stop. Now, a lot of people will hear that and they'll laugh and they'll say something like, well, that probably means you don't have your offensive coordinator picked out, or that means you don't know what you're going to be. I would say nay. I would say the opposite. I would say some of these football coaches nowadays, some of the better ones, they have a core principle of who they are. They have a core traits of what they do. They have a foundation that they have built on their home with regards to what offense they're going to be. But a lot of really, really good coordinators nowadays are looking at their new opponent on Sunday, and they are devising a game plan to really stress and press that new opponent on Saturday. And they spend the week developing into this new versions of themselves, slightly new version of themselves, and then they go out and they whip the ass of their new opponent, and then they start fresh the next week. You know who is a company or a football program like this? Georgia, where Fran Brown just came from. They have their core principles. They have their core traits. But every single week, they're going to do something that you don't do well, and they're going to make you do it. They're going to make you do it for 4 quarters because that is what they're made to do. They're made to do what they do while forcing you to do what you don't want to do and then just smacking your ass for 4 quarters doing so. That's what Fran Brown wants to become. And when I hear questions like that, we will do what the defense can't, that tells me you're going to be a game plan-oriented offense. And if you're a game plan-oriented offense, I don't have to know much about your quarterback except for this. That son of a bitch better be smart. He better be smart because he better be able to intake the new information and go apply it that week. All right, so whatever the offense looks like, I am led to believe that it will be a football team that is predicated off game plan, which means the quarterback better be smart.
Yeah, and I mean, Kyle McCord is a perfect quarterback for that situation as well, because if you are changing the game plan up a lot week by week, you also want a guy that you know is going to protect the football. He's not going to lose you football games, at least most of the time. That's exactly what Kyle McCord was at Ohio State, so I think that's putting him in a perfect situation, and then also you're building around him with other transfer portal entries.
He's obviously a talented football player. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. He's big, he's physical, he can rip it. I saw a football player that lacked confidence when I watched him at Ohio State. He looked timid. He looked like someone who wasn't being fed, you're the greatest, son, go be great. And sometimes that's all it takes, man, some general belief. And I would imagine Fran is going to provide that to him.
Am I allowed to say that I kind of really like this? And because you look at the names, and I just, like, the names are so hard. You look at Kyle McCord, and you look at Syracuse, and you're like, don't do it, man. Don't do it. Don't do it. But when I've seen Kyle McCord throw in person and what I have observed from him, and I haven't done the whole Ohio State deep dive, but it's he's got a strong arm.
Yeah.
But it's a strong ball every time.
Yeah.
He's got the right plan, but it's the one every single time. And I kind of like going to the ACC, going with Syracuse, with Fran Brown. Let's do this new experiment. Let's kind of Jake Plummer was a starting quarterback for the runner-up in the ACC this year.
That's crazy.
I know Kyle McCord can do that.
Yeah.
I know he can. Now, I don't know if it's at Syracuse, but I watched him play good down that last 5-game stretch. Wasn't great against Michigan, but there were some moments, and I kind of like it.
I'd be damned if Jake Plummer's going to be the bar for my conference. I'll be damned. Shit. No wonder we got left out of the college football playoff. Damn. If Jake Plummer were the bar of average, whoo, there'd be a lot of elite motherfuckers out here in this world. Oh, sorry, Jake. That's unfortunate for you, Mr. Plummer. It's just the name.
Yeah.
If Jake Plummer would name something like, I don't know, give me a cool last name, Jake Williams. If he were just Jake Williams, I'd be like, you know what? Jake Williams got a little something to him. But Jake Plummer's some 6'2" stacked mid.
Yeah, us Williams don't ball like that. But I think, especially like going into your point of a guy that lacks confidence, I think that also makes Syracuse the perfect landing spot for him as well, because the expectations, I know Ohio State, especially last year, is, okay, we got a first-round wide receiver that might be putting up special numbers, but it also has to do with year play. And we're also looking to beat Michigan for the first time in 3 years now, and we're also looking to make the college football playoff and push for a national title. We have a great defense this year. We're looking to capitalize off of that. You're a first-year starter. It's on you now to deliver that for us. Whereas at Syracuse, I can go there, a program that really has no expectations right now other than Fran Brown. We want to see you elevate this program. And we just got into the whole conversation of what the ACC looks like. I mean, based on what they're doing in the portal right now, who's to say that Syracuse can't go and compete in the ACC next year?
I mean, we went through the schedule the other night. It's really
easy.
favorable.
Very.
It's really favorable. And he's recruiting at a level that Syracuse has not been able to. No. I hope to get Fran on the show. And that's the first question I want to ask him is like, what are you doing to overcome the obstacles that have always seemingly plagued that university? That university is, if we don't have homegrown New York elite skill talent and a couple of big guys, we can't really compete. Every once in a while, they'll bust out a corner. They'll bust out a left-handed quarterback and an elite running back or whatever. What was it, Mendenhall or whoever that mix was that they had between the elite lefty quarterback and the two running backs that they had when they played for a Rose Bowl a couple of years ago. Or was that Illinois? Whatever. Orange and blue. Either way, this football program doesn't do a lot of traditional winning or traditional recruiting at this level. So he must have something. He must have some type of different – that's another question I want to ask him. What is it about you that people are buying into? Because he's getting kids to take into account, I might play at Syracuse, that, again, no one has ever really done at that level. And he did the same thing at Georgia. He recruited at a level at Georgia that was like – not necessarily unprecedented. It was impressive. And if you are impressive with that G on your chest, because everybody does that guy's going to kill with a G on your chest. I'm going to tell you right now, I'd kill on the recruiting trail with a G on my chest. You kidding me? I got Kirby Smart closing for me? You shit me? I'd never lose a battle, ever. Not once. I'm telling you. Okay? So everyone's going to be great with that G on your chest. Fran Brown was still that plus some. Very akin to like what Todd Hartley's doing right now. Just didn't have the large sample size of that, but he was going to.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's nothing traditional about the Syracuse football program. They play in a dome. What other college football program does that?
Idaho. Shouts out to the potato famine.
That sounds about right. And then you're in the state of New York. Like, that's very untraditional football territory for at least the college football level. Like, there's no tradition really implemented in an area like that. And he's getting guys to not only be interested, but like, oh, I'll go check out the Cuse. Go up there and sniff around the orange a little bit, see what's going on over there.
Any guesses on the Idaho mascot?
Vandal.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
That a boy. The Vandals, an elite indoor facility, by the way. It only has stands on the sidelines, and then it's hard stop at the end zones.
That shit slapped in NCAA 14.
Yeah, I was about to say that NCAA Dynasty Stadium was crazy.
That shit was brazy.
It was crazy.
Oh, man, good stuff. No, I think we'll find out about Fran. We'll find out about this offense. But I think we're going to continue to talk about Syracuse football. It's something that I never thought when we went national is something that we would be talking about. I think the key is, though, to provide confidence to that young football player. He looked very timid to me. He looked very under pressure the entire time. Let him play with a loose booty and see what happens. That's all I'm saying. Chip Kelly thinks he fixed football. Chip Kelly was out here talking about some super conference and talking about some splitting the regions and talking about some revenue sharing and talking about some stuff that my boy Charlie Baker basically tried to tell y'all was finna happen, and y'all was like, it's the NCAA president, don't nobody give a shit about that guy. But Charlie Baker basically submitted a plan to create a sub-region or a subdivision for Power 5 football teams that were able to put a $6 million budget together to ultimately pay athletes. Now, here's what Charlie Baker can't do. Charlie Baker, as the president of the NCAA, can't come out here and talk about revenue sharing. He will lose his job. Charlie Baker can't come out here and talk about separating football from the rest of the sports because this thing called Title IX exists, and Charlie Baker would lose his job. But Charlie Baker can come out here and tell you that 64 of these teams, probably 70 of these teams, are way different financially structure-wise than any of the other football teams. Yet all these football teams play together and play against each other and play for the same quote-unquote trophy, but half of them aren't really looked at like the other half are. These big halves are looked at way different than the rest of the other halves. That's how Charlie Baker told you he was fitting to do it or wanted to do it. Chip Kelly came out here with some statements today and yesterday that went viral because, hey, Chip Kelly's this genius. And I love Chip Kelly, and we give Chip Kelly his flowers. And we're about to play a clip of Chip Kelly being a genius. But I'm here to tell you that what Chip Kelly is talking about will never happen. Not as long as the NCAA is around, or unless the NCAA loses some lawsuits, like they will inevitably lose and will ultimately be dissolved. But until then, what Chip Kelly is about to reference is probably impossible to happen. But hey, it sure would be nice. Play that clip for us, Evan.
I'm in NIL, transfer portal, and what would your plan maybe be to try to solve it?
I think they're all a problem, and I think we need to have a conference commissioner. I think football should be separate from the other sports. Just the fact that our school is leaving to go to the Big Ten in football, our softball team should be playing Arizona in softball. Our basketball team should be playing Arizona in basketball. But because football left, and they're saying, well, how do you do that? Well, Notre Dame's independent in football, and they're in a conference and everything else. I think we should all be independent in football. And you can have a 64-team conference that's in the Power 5, and you can have a 64-team conference in the Group of 5. And we separate it, and we play each other. You can have the West Coast teams, and then every year we play 7 games against the West Coast teams, and then we play the East. So we play Syracuse, Boston College, Pitt, West Virginia, Virginia. Then the next year you play against the South while you still play your 7 teams. You can play a 7-game schedule. You can play 4 against another conference, another division opponent, and you can always play against one Mountain West team every year so that we can still keep those rivalries going. Not that I've really thought about this. Not that I've a lot of spent of time on this. But I think if you went together collectively as a group and said there's 132 teams and we all share in the same we all share the same TV contract, so that the Mountain West doesn't have one and the Sun Belt doesn't have another and SEC has one and they have another, that we all go together, that's a lot of games, and there's a lot of people in the TV world that would go through it. You can sponsor each one. Instead of calling it Group of 5 and Power 5, you can call it Amazon, Nike, bid that out to things. You can do a lot of different things. But I think if we still do the same thing and take all that money, and I would do this, and I think this needs to be done, that money now needs to be shared with the student athletes, and there needs to be revenue sharing, and the players should get paid, and you can get rid of NLI, and the schools should be paying the players because the players are what the product is.
Are you laughing?
And
at
the
what
fact
I'm
that they
laughing at?
don't
You can
get
cut that
paid.
off. Are you laughing at the fact that he said NLI
Yeah.
instead of NIL?
Yeah.
The fact that a head football coach is out here messing up the acronyms for these things, because that's not what they call it. They just call it pay for play, I would imagine, in the building.
Yeah.
They're not out here talking about NIL. They're talking about how much does Jimmy need? How much money does Jimmy need for us to keep him around? That's what they're talking about right now. Again, a lot of great suggestions right there. I hope something similar to that happens. But this idea that you're going to separate the revenue-producing sport from the other ones, it just doesn't happen because of this Title IX stuff. And also, by the way, revenue sharing is going to come down the pike, and it will revolutionize football, and it will look totally different, and unions will get enacted into college football and all this good stuff. But there's got to be something done. I like his uniformity of that far better than what we got right now. The Big 12 had 10 teams. They're moving to 14, about to be 16. The Big 10 had 14 teams. Now they're at 16, about to go to 18. The SEC has 16 teams, but what happens if they want to take Clemson and Florida State or whoever? Maybe they get bumped to 18. The ACC's got 16 teams, and the Big 12 or the Pac-12 just dissolved. They got 2 teams remaining. So, like, this idea that these conferences are just going to continue to expand, and now we really have a group of 4. We basically have what he's talking about anyways. We might as well just have 4 regions of 16 teams and just do it that way. Why just, you know what? Let's just do NFC and AFC. You know what? Let's just do NFC North, South, East, and West. You know what? Let's just make it like the product on Sundays. Why don't we? So I think we're ultimately going to go into something like this, because here's what I'm going to tell you is not going to go. What's not going to go is UCLA's baseball, basketball, softball, and swimming teams taking a nosedive because those players don't want to travel across the country every single year. So though football may be the breadwinner, you're still going to lose some lore in your other athletic departments that just, it ain't going to fly. You can't be mediocre at football and have all of your other sports deteriorate and think that an athletic administrator is going to just be like, yeah, sounds like a great idea. They pay us $60 million a year.
Yeah, especially when you have a conference like the SEC where they don't have to do any of that. So like a baseball player, a swimmer, or women's basketball player, any of that, they're looking at, okay, I could go to Oregon, or I could go take up on this Vanderbilt offer where I don't have to travel around the world every single week of my life when it's in season, and I can just stay within the Southeast region. And occasionally maybe I go play an out-of-conference game or whatnot, but that's not my day-to-day life. So I think it's definitely going to hurt those other programs.
I'm interested to see how this conference realignment, conference changing affects the recruiting, because a big pitch for, I mean, since day one, like NCAA, it's part of it. Stay close to home.
Yeah.
I'm staying close to home. Well, if you're a California kid and you got to play a Big Ten schedule, you ain't close to home for anything if you go to USC or UCLA.
No.
You're gone all the time. All those advantages go right out the window. So it's tough for me to get there, and I don't know.
We've seen all of these conferences realign in just like the last 18 months. I find it hard to believe that these types of moves last the lifespan of these contracts. I find it hard to believe that 5 years from now, UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington are going to look up and say, this was great. This was awesome for all of us. Let's stick around. But then again, this idea that a college football commissioner were to happen, do we just think one czar is going to fix all this? Because I'm going to tell you right now, everybody hates Roger Goodell. Everybody thinks Roger Goodell's the stupidest human being alive. All right, what's his name that runs the NBA? David Stern? Or
Yep.
it was David Stern.
Adam Silver.
Adam Silver had the highest PR rating in the history of commissioners. Everybody loved that dude. They don't know more. Everybody cooking Adam Silver left and right when they get an opportunity to. So this idea that just because somebody's going to be the college football czar, I don't care if he's got as high as a PR rating as Josh Pate. The dude's going to get cooked. Y'all going to hate every decision he makes because it's not going to be favorable for your specific football team, and you're going to think that's biased towards you, and you're going to hate the guy. All right, now at least there's this unknown monster in the dark alleys pulling the strings on everything, and you guys don't know who to point your hate at, so you do it to Charlie Baker. So much so that when Charlie Baker says almost verbatim the same thing our man Chip says, don't nobody pay attention to it. Don't nobody care except for us because we read. We read it to you, subdivision, about 64 teams, going to spend some money, going to give some NIL brackets, going to have to spread it out evenly over all of the schools, accountable athletes, all that good stuff. And everybody's like, it's Charlie Baker. Nobody cares. But Chip Kelly comes out here, give me a college football commissioner. Give me 64 teams. Give me 2 different divisions. We can play each other. Yada, yada, yada. Chip Kelly, genius.
I want to know what Chip Kelly did. I want to know what he did because 4 weeks ago, I was reading reports that this man is fired unless he wins this weekend. And now he's past that and a starting transfer quarterback in the portal now. It doesn't have him anymore. And now he's talking about the future of college football with the UCLA logo on his chest. I want to know what he did the last 4 weeks to maintain his spot.
He knows where the bodies are. Ooh. He's got to. He's got to know where the bodies are. He you forgot to mention that in the midst of all that, his recruits stole all the gold chains from Colorado.
Yeah.
Whatever happened with that?
I guess they just didn't charge the recruits with any type of stuff. Man, that'd be a bad way to ruin your college career. Stealing the shadur.
You have a pretty iconic 24 hours, though.
I mean, do you? Is that what we're calling that?
I don't know.
Iconic?
I guess you can't come out on social media and be like,
yeah.
"Oh, look, bro, I got Shadur's Rolex."
Look at the shadur. Nah, that's classic Chip Kelly out here saving his job. I got a similar story to this. Never give up. If someone ever sends you your termination agreement letter, don't accept it. Fight that bitch to the death. All right, as long as you can, because you just might change your life. I got some updates on this Bama Michigan stuff. Y'all want to hear it?
Let's hear it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Kirby, our man Kirby's not here today. Okay, Kirby is normally our don't trust the public money guy. All right, he's also our resident gambler. Mama Kirby, if you're listening, I'm sorry, your son's a degenerate. Don't trust the public. That's what our boy Kirby told us over and over and over again when this line opened up at 1.5. Okay, this line between Michigan and Alabama favored Michigan by 1.5 points, and everybody and their mama was out here like, whoa, Alabama, way better football team. Alabama going to skull drag that school. What the hell's going on here? Why ain't it moving? Why ain't it moving? Why ain't it moving? So much so that I looked up today, boys, and 80% of the public money is on Alabama to win this football game. Not even on the spread, money line, which makes sense. 1.5, right? Might as well just take it on the money. So it makes sense. But 80% of the money is currently on Alabama in Vegas. And let me explain something to you guys who don't know how handicapping works. The whole reason Vegas puts a number on that, all right, is to try to balance the cash. All right, they're trying to get their favorable winning percentages at about 52 to 48. That's what they want. Wherever it shakes out, they want to win the 2 to 3%, right? What they want to avoid is 80% of the money laying on one football team unless they believe the other way. Right? Unless they believe the other way, they're not going to move that. They will ultimately move that line. And here is the example. 80% of this money right now is on Alabama to win this football game. Yet the line has moved 0.5 point. So what does that tell you? That tells you that for some reason, Vegas believes in this Michigan football team. And I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why. I can't. This football game's got Bama 27-17 written all over it. 213, 338, 291, 287. What did I just read to you? I just read to you the total yards gained by this Michigan offense over the last 4 football games. Okay? And granted, one of those, Iowa, a second one, Ohio State, a third one, Penn State. Those 3 football teams are staunched in the top 10. Okay, just hard and fast in the top 10 in defensive metrics across the board this year. They are, without a doubt, great defenses. You know who's the 4th best defense this football team has played all year? Alabama. Okay, Alabama ain't no scrubs defensively. All right, shouts out to TLC. They are gross. They are gross on the defensive side of the football, and Michigan is way grosser. Michigan, over the last 4 football games, has averaged 282 yards per football game. My stats, man. If that were their average all year long, do you know where they would rank in total offense?
I'd probably say around the 45 range.
Wrong. Do you have any idea?
85.
125th. 125th is how this football team has performed on the offensive side of the football against anybody with a goddamn pulse on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know what in the hell Vegas is seeing, but I'm probably wrong because Vegas is always right. What do you think they're seeing? How can they hold steadfast to the fact that they are essentially picking Michigan to win this football game? What are they seeing?
I think maybe they're looking at it as Alabama hadn't played a perfect football game up until this final moment against Georgia in the SEC championship game, and that format of play from them kind of looked against everything else that they had done and provided this entire year. And maybe Vegas is just saying, we don't think they can do it twice. We think this Michigan defense is really good. We think people are underestimating it. And we think that maybe they have the recipe to defeat an Alabama offense that is hinged on the fact that Jalen Milroe is the best athlete on the field, and they're giving him the football and saying, go win us the football game.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing in America worse than watching Michigan in these last 5 weeks might be watching Iowa.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at the stats right now. I can't get the exact number, but it's close. Like, the Iowa whole year, Michigan the last 5 weeks, it's about the same. And that's why Michigan's probably going to win this football game, because it's just going to make no sense. There is no rhyme or reason. Like, I believe in that defense, and I also believe that funky stuff happens in the college football playoff.
And maybe they've been so mid on offense because they know they can be, and they're just like withholding all of their actual play calling. I don't necessarily believe that to be true. And here's the other thing, and I said this about them in June, about the Georgia period that they were enacting. This has nothing to do with the opponent across the field, except for the fact that the opponent across the field ain't no bitch. Alabama ain't no bitch. Like, Michigan has shown up in the Big Ten the last 2 years, and they have pushed around lesser than opponents. They have bullied. They have mentally bullied every single opponent until they face a bully. And then guess what? They get their face mask broke in. So, like, this idea to me that the game plan or the style of this football game is we are atrocious on offense, but we're going to 3 yards and cloud of dust your ass to a national title championship run, like, I find that very dubious. I find that very hard to believe because, again, this football team is not going to get pushed around. I thought they didn't bully Georgia, but they very, very much so set the tone in that football game. Alabama was the aggressor for 4 quarters against what we thought was the nation's best football team.
Two things that make me want to say that Alabama is without a doubt going to win this football game. I believe the SEC is undefeated in semifinal games in the college football playoff. I don't think they have lost a single semifinal game since the origination of the college football playoff. 2, Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines have gotten teabagged both times in the semifinal games. They got stomped by Georgia the first time, and then they they messed around and found out it's TCU last year, and they turned the ball over a few times, and next thing you know, it's like, whoa, we're not going to the national title game.
We're going to put that one in highlighter. I think that one counts. We're going to put that one over here for the Minions cuss words. Ooh, Mama J Will going to be hot. He's like, Mom, it's okay.
Jim Harbaugh.
We were talking about Jim Harbaugh. I think the other to me it boils down to bullies don't get bullied. I don't believe SEC football teams that make it to this point playing the brand of football that they do are going to be out here getting bitched around by Michigan.
Yeah, and I think the number one thing in this game, the best player in this game has to be Dallas Turner, and is Dallas Turner, in my opinion. That length, that effort, that attitude, like that's a bad MF. My mom's probably watching, so I can't go all the way. I can't go J Will, but he's a bad dude.
He is a bad dude. And the other thing that Alabama has in their favor that I don't think a lot of other teams do against Michigan is they could cover zero that ass for 4 quarters and they would not have a problem.
Like,
they could show zero safety help. They could go man across the board and just say, hey, they only run 3-man routes. You 3 got to have your eyes right. The other 8 are dedicated to the rock. And guess what? Yeah, that's about it. Like, they have not had to stress about whether or not they can cover football teams all year, and they won't in this football game either. I think it boils down to me that anytime they have played a relatively decent defense, like even Maryland's top 40 in defense, and they got boxed 291 yards total against Maryland. So, and we've seen this in years past. Last year, Illinois put them in a stranglehold for 4 quarters and almost beat them. Guess what? Illinois had 2 NFL football players, one at safety and one at corner, and a solid defensive line. So, like, that's all it really requires to make this offense really, really stagnant.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to get behind the fact of I don't know what answer Michigan has on offense that can answer against what Alabama has on defense. You can't sit here and tell me that Michigan is going to bully them up front when that hasn't been the case in either of their semifinal games the last 2 years. They have not done that regardless of how good their offensive line has been and regardless of how good their running backs have been. That just hasn't been the case for them. And then who do they have at wide receiver? Roman Wilson maybe can help compete against guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terry Arnold, but I just don't see it. I cannot believe that Michigan offense is going to go out there and win them a football game against a defense like Alabama.
No, 100%. And I watched Taulia Tagovailoa. Respect, 100%. Like, great college career. He's Talia Tagovailoa, though, and he went out there and threw seeds against this defense. I haven't seen someone do that to Alabama since Quinn Ewers, and Quinn Ewers is also in this college football playoff for a reason. And I just have a lot of confidence in this Alabama team. When stuff like that clip comes out, a Michigan reacting to them getting Alabama, like,
Oh God.
you don't want to read into that too much, but also that stuff does matter.
Hell yeah. I've been in those rooms. When you hear audible gasp, you know your ass is beat already.
Yeah.
You are beat. I got a little poem here. This one's I got sent to me. It's in a reply of a Jeff Sentell tweet. I can write poetry too. Well, he just went from playing in the CFP to watching it on TV. From realization of trophies you'll no longer adorn, enjoy mediocrity in the land of corn. Sorry to see you never enter our door, but hey, go enjoy the possibility of 8-4. Bars.
Who is that?
That's a Georgia fan. Let me read his actual
Yeah,
Twitter
read that
handle.
out.
That was some bars.
But
from
I'm not
my
a
man.
rapper.
Of course, a CPA at Josh Jones CPA. That's JAS Jones CPA. So can be out here messing with your books and cooking y'all on Twitter. So shouts out to that. We didn't make the jokes today. They did.
Yeah.
So that's not on us.
No.
So Damani Jackson in the portal, USC corner. Y'all want to know a little something about Damani?
Please.
Damani verified burner, absolute burner. I think sub 10.3 in the 100, sub 4.38 in the 40, about 6 foot, 185 pounds. Checks every physical box that the University of Georgia demands at their cornerback position. And his position coach just took the position coach job at Georgia, the guy who landed him. One of the 6 5-stars that he landed, Damani Jackson. A really, really good football player. I saw him for the first time out at the Nike opening in 2022. I want to say it's the last one that mattered. This year was, I don't lack of a better term, it was a little bit not embarrassing. It was a waste of time for position players to go out there last year. You agree?
Yeah.
I mean, they had the same 40 people on the field playing
No
7-on-7 for 4 hours.
And we didn't learn anything new.
No, we didn't. We knew who we saw, and we already knew everything about them. So that was unfortunate for that event because the opening used to be the best. Like you would see every great player you needed to see in a matter of 3 days out there. Every great quarterback, every great position player, every skill player. They even had the opening for the offensive line back before COVID, and they could put helmets and shoulder pads on. So the last year they had that, it was like Brian Brzee and Tate Ratledge and all that group out there in San Antonio, like really getting after it, and the Nike opening really getting after it. Now we don't get nothing like that. Now it's just watered down. It's a throwing competition for the quarterbacks, and it's a great evaluation point for that, but we don't get anything else out of that. But the last one we actually got something out of. Damani Jackson was the best corner at that Nike opening. Rotated against a lot of good competition that day, and I think had 3 or 4 interceptions in one like multiple hour 7-on-7 session. So a tremendous athlete with tremendous ball skills and a tremendous connection to the University of Georgia. I would imagine Dante Williams was probably one of his first phone calls.
I like corners that can attack the ground with their feet and play with pace. And I've seen Damani on tape. I haven't got the in-person eval, but the way that he can shift from in his back pedal going really, really hard, but then when he has to break, he can slow, break, come out of it. He attacks the game with pace. No wasted movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an extremely pivotal position, a defensive back, where you can't have any wasted movement, any misstep, any misturn, everything is predicated on the fact that you have to be in front of this man at all times, and one misstep it could cost you 50 yards, it could cost you 6 points.
I saw a couple of blown coverages from him this year. I think most notably, I was watching not Utah State. They played San Jose State, right? And they gave up a touchdown right before the half.
Sounds right.
And it was a cover 2 hole throw where Damani just didn't sink back far enough and looked like he didn't carry vertical enough. But nonetheless, not a zone corner. This is a bump and run man guy. Like all the traits that this kid has, you should just walk him out there and say, hey, we're just going to play man coverage. He's got 3 years of eligibility. I would imagine if it does end up Georgia, the idea that they're going to have Ellis Robinson next year in 2025, think about this. They could have Ellis Robinson on one side and Damani Jackson on the other side. And I don't know if they've ever had 2 traits-here corners, if that were to be the picture. If that's what it looks like 18 months from now, good luck. They're basically going to be a version of what Alabama looks like right now with Terrion Arnold and Quincy McKinstry, because that's what it does to you. Like, if you have 2 elite corners, man, like everything else just becomes so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, you shrink the field against everybody that you play. Every single window becomes tighter. I mean, this field feels like it's all of a sudden 35 yards in width.
Yeah, no, I remember I had a conversation with you when I first started scouting and first started getting into it, and a lot of it was about hyperbole and not trying to make people sound bigger or worse or whatever than they are. Ellis Robinson is a first-team All-American talent.
Yeah.
That I have no problem saying that.
Yeah.
That kid he is unbelievable. His battle with Jeremiah Smith at the OT7 was like a religious experience.
Yeah,
like I felt like I was in gospel.
My man over there laughing from back there. That is fact. You see something like that for a first time as a scout, bro. Like it'll stick with you forever.
I saw kids decide to get baptized at that OT7 event off that. I swear.
Yeah, man. I had the same feelings about Broderick Jones the first time I saw him work out in a private session. I was like, that. You're right. It's hard not to walk away with hyperbole. It's hard not to walk away and say that's the best I've ever seen, or that's going to be the best I've ever seen. We just got done doing this with LaDamian Guyton last week, right? A 6'4", 230-pound 14-year-old, like moving like he's supposed to at that size at 14 as a true freshman playing for a state title game against Cedar Grove and looking every bit the part. My immediate thought was that might be the best player I've ever seen. When I'm done, when he's done, that guy might be him. You know what I mean? Whereas I felt the same way about Caleb Downs coming out of high school. That's the best position player I've ever seen. He impacts more football games than anybody I've ever seen. Ellis Robinson gives me those vibes. Ellis Robinson, I would imagine, was what it felt like to evaluate Patrick Surtain coming out. I bet it felt the same way watching Tyson Campbell run around in high school. Go watch Tyson Campbell's high school tape. Tell me you don't think that's the best high school corner you've ever seen. It's insane. Okay, he makes every play. And he's also a track runner and is out here with all the testing and all the measurables and all the verifiables. Ellis Robinson feels the same way. Damani Jackson, very similar in the physical traits, just doesn't have the arm length. It all smells. Like I said, his physical profile to me smells like the University of Georgia. Have you heard the latest in the Malik Murphy news?
I saw like he was taking trips to Baylor. I think I saw
a lot of Duke smoke.
Duke.
Yeah.
A lot of Duke smoke right now with him. Baylor just got their guy. They got the kid from Toledo.
Okay.
So, yeah, my face exactly. I thought he was going to play at a bigger school. No offense to Dave Aranda and the folks at Baylor. I thought the kid from Toledo had some serious, like, big-time P5 juice for one of these teams that's maybe a quarterback away from national title contentions or at least playoff contentions in the 12-team playoff. I like the idea of him to Duke. They seem to do a really, really good job historically of protecting their quarterbacks. I don't love the idea of going to play for a defensive mind in Manny Diaz. You know what I mean? That's a lifetime D coordinator.
Well, especially the fact that Duke feels like it's taking a step back this next year because you just lost your head coach. You just lost Riley Leonard, and Riley Leonard was the heart and soul of that offense for the most part. I mean, those big keynote wins that they had against like Clemson, it was because Riley Leonard was playing quarterback under center for the Blue Devils. And Malik Murphy could potentially be that for them. He could be that guy. It's like we're going to put it all on his shoulders, and he's going to go out there and muscle us 9 wins. But I feel like going to a program that's kind of undergoing a lot of change, undergoing some uncertainty into 2024, I hate to say that like this, but I would have liked to see him go somewhere else, maybe, and really get to see the full potential of someone like Malik Murphy.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I would have liked to see him go to I always thought like Ohio State would have been a dream situation with that half-field read and just the pick and stick nature of that offense. And like again, he gets classified into this athletic mold that needs to go run. That dude needs to sit in the pocket and throw seeds. That's what that dude needs to do. So I'm with you. We'll see where the fit ends up going. I know his representation. He's well represented. Wherever he goes, it'll be a good home for him, I would imagine. KJ Jefferson officially in the portal. Some weird negotiation tactics here. Seemed to me like he was thinking about going into the portal to gauge the market, but also wanted to leave the opportunity that he might stay at Arkansas because he didn't want to piss off fans, is what it looked like to me. What do we make of this whole situation with KJ Jefferson?
Just super weird in general because it really, I mean, we sat here multiple times like, is KJ Jefferson in the portal yet? We do not know because it seems like one day it's like, it looks like he's going to enter the portal and it's like, but we don't know because he's not officially in the portal. Now he's officially in the portal and it's like, okay, well, what's next for him now? Maybe it's South Carolina, I guess, is kind of sniffing around, but who really knows?
KJ Jefferson is one of the college quarterbacks of all time. Just like if you think where he and that Arkansas program were 2 years ago,
Yeah.
you flash forward to now, and it's like he's coming back. He's using this extra year. They just went 4-8. It's just weird.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand what's going on in Fayetteville. Like, I really can't put my finger on it.
It was also hard to understand how they just made him look absolutely terrible this year.
He looked awful.
Awful. And they kept asking him to do things he's not made to do. They didn't run him a lot. I didn't see the patented quarterback KJ Jefferson draw. Like, dude's automatic first down, P and 10 when it comes to 3rd and 4. Like, dude, clear out, quarterback draw, scream it from the heavens. Doesn't matter. You're not going to stop it. Like, he just fell forward for 5 yards for the first 2 years as a starter at Arkansas. And then this year is just absolutely atrocious. So I'm happy for him to have gotten out of there. Maybe I should have known. I mean, we should have talked about this. It's obvious why he stuck around. Maybe he was listening to old Rick Pitino for a little bit, giving him his due. Let him figure out, give him his sales pitch, because they just hired a new offensive coordinator in Pitino, brought the neck brace back, and now, he's obviously going to coach there. So maybe it was let's listen to Pitino, see what he's got for us.
If you were South Carolina next year, would you rather start Lenora Sellers or KJ Jefferson?
Dude, from what I hear, and I know you were there,
Baller.
Yeah, they think Lenora Sellers is a dude.
I would start Lenora. He's a dude.
And you know what? If you're a football coach like Shane Beamer, if you have a redshirt freshman show promise, I mean, you can be 4-8.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't firing you. They're gonna bring that sucker back because if he's good, if he looks like he's got some juice, they might just stick around and let him ride it out.
Yeah, and I think especially with the way South Carolina's recruiting in the transfer portal right now, like you already went and got yourself a verifiable running back. I think that's a good situation to put a young quarterback in where you have a reliability person in the backfield to where it's like, okay, if we need to, just hand it off to a guy, let him cook a little bit, and we can make you a little bit more comfortable. But then going against that, if South Carolina is going to keep producing what they have at offensive line like these last 2 years, I think that's a horrible situation to put a young quarterback in. It's like, good luck, buddy. We don't know what's going to happen to you today. You might get sacked 8 times, but you also might throw for 300 yards.
Have they done anything to solidify that offensive line? I know most of their portal additions have been skill guys.
The most recent thing I saw is that they were expecting their starting center back, who, I mean, he was on that line. I don't think he was anything crazy.
And they're still a year away.
Leaving.
They're still a year away from Cam Pringle, right?
Yep.
He's a 2025.
And I think they get Josiah Thompson. They get him in.
Okay.
And I mean, it's real spotty.
It's slim pickings.
It's slim.
At a spot that they probably should have heavily invested in this offseason. I don't know. He's had some questionable decisions. Like, for example, they lost their defensive line coach last summer to LSU. That was the guy that had some health issues this year when he got to LSU. Mm-hmm. They lost him, and instead of hiring or going out and hiring a new guy, they just promoted in-house a defensive analyst. It sounded like the guy was very, very young. I'm not saying he's not going to end up being a coach, but the room didn't produce the results that they thought it was going to. I mean, Tonka Hemingway had a very mediocre year this year. They obviously missed out on the Xavier McLeod output or return on investment or whatever was going to happen there. So it was just a rough year from a defensive line production standpoint. And on top of that, again, all of the problems that they got going on the offensive side of the football from an offensive line perspective. Another interesting name popped into the portal today, and I got some flack on this one on Twitter. Malachi Nelson entering the portal tells me a lot. Tells me a lot really, really quickly about what Lincoln Riley thought of his chances to win football games with that dude. Malachi Nelson was his guy. Malachi Nelson was handpicked. Malachi Nelson was committed to Oklahoma. Malachi Nelson decommitted from Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley left the job. Malachi Nelson recommitted to USC, to Lincoln Riley. Malachi Nelson went and spent a year there and is in the portal now because they're probably going to land Will Howard from Kansas State. That tells me everything I need to know about what Lincoln Riley thought about Malachi Nelson. And look, here's the deal. I got flack for calling him a quarterback developer when he ain't really never, quote-unquote, developed quarterback talent to the extent that a lot of people think, right? There's a lot of credit given to Jalen Hurts' development to Lincoln Riley, but Baker Mayfield, we've seen what's happening there. It looks like it's okay. It's a serviceable NFL quarterback, but ain't like that dude's lighting the woods on or lighting the world on fire in the NFL. Already on his second team. We've seen what the Kyler Murray stuff's turned out to be. Caleb Williams, did he really get that much better, or did he really just put up great stats? That's the point that a lot of people were making. Here's the point that I'm making. That offense seems to be pretty easy to play quarterback in. And he didn't believe he was finna win football games with that kid. That's wild. That's wild to me because it looked like that was going to be a dude coming out of high school. To me, and you'll be really, really onto this one. That looks like Nico Yamalavela to me with 30-some-odd career high school starts. A lot of people forget Nico's this really, really talented football player, 6'5", 220 pounds, can make every throw in the world. You know who else was? Malachi Nelson, except Malachi Nelson's got a long, long history of film, a long history of evaluations, a long history of detailed intel about who this guy is, who this football player will be, and he didn't pan out. We don't know nothing about Nico except for what Nico did in 7-on-7, except for what Nico did in the 12. 13 high school starts?
I think it was 13 is the number.
13 high school starts. We don't know nothing about Nico, and he got to college, and we're going to find out. But we knew far more about Malachi Nelson. I'm not connecting the two. It just reminded me, hey, West Coast kid, big, tall, lanky, got a lot of juice, a lot of natural arm and life on the ball. What's he going to be? I felt like I knew Malachi Nelson was going to be really good, and this guy just passed on him being what was supposed to be the guy. So it's weird, man. It doesn't make me feel great about whoever's going to land Malachi Nelson next. Not to say he can't be good, but it looks to me like a guy that is known for making good quarterbacks great, or at least statistically. He just passed up on the opportunity.
No, I tend to 100%. Like, this is just a weird all-around situation where I was going back and looking at some Malachi Nelson tape today from that senior year, from that junior year, and there are hummers.
Yeah, dude.
You're like, whoa,
yeah,
what
bro.
is this? Like, it is Nico Iamaleava in high school.
Yeah.
Like, it is crazy.
One more time.
Iamaleava. You're out the
Iamaleava.
Iamaleava.
Huh?
Iamaleava.
Can we just go with Nico?
Ilava?
You can go Nico.
I'm going Nico
No,
for the rest
I'm
of
a professional.
eternity.
Let's try this. One more time.
Iamaleava.
Iamaleava.
They call
Got
him
it.
Nico. They don't even
Hell
try.
yeah.
They don't even try.
Hell yeah, they do.
So let's
I
go.
call him Neek.
We could even go with this notion, though, that Lincoln Riley has not developed any quarterbacks. He's just been gifted of the gods of like who he gets to coach up.
Correct. Let's go with that approach.
Regardless, though, he sure as shit knows what a Heisman quarterback looks like. He
Yeah.
knows what it's supposed to look like. He's
Yeah.
seen it for the last 6 years. So he can easily say, yep, that guy's going to win a Heisman in the next few years, and that guy's going to win me football games. Oh, yeah, no, you do not look like the other 4 quarterbacks that I've had.
I'm just imagining him looking at the 5-star Malachi Nelson and being like, sign me up for Will Howard. sign me up for Will Howard.
K-State.
Shouts out to the Jayhawks. Not Jayhawks, excuse me. Wildcats. Shouts out my boy Ethan back there. Wildcats. Dumb COVID brain. Not COVID brain, CTE brain. Yeah.
that'll
up here.
do it.
Probably should make jokes about that.
Part of what doesn't make sense to me about that reply about, like, what are the Lincoln Riley quarterbacks doing now? It's like, yeah, okay, like, maybe they all haven't had the greatest career, but you like Caleb Williams, probably going to be the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray won Rookie of the Year.
Was the number 1 overall pick.
It was the number 1 overall pick, went to a Pro Bowl. Baker Mayfield hasn't had the best NFL career. He's a 6-year starter. He might go to the playoffs this year. It's a bad NFC South, sure. Whatever. Jalen Hurts was the best player on a Super Bowl team or a Super Bowl offense last year. Who else? What other coach in college has that quarterback tree?
Man's got a good point. So
It's not great, but when is NFL quarterbacks ever great?
you're 100% right. He's at we call it 65% hit rate.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts hit. Baker Mayfield, we're going to call that a hit.
Yeah.
I think that's a hit. 6-year starter.
For sure.
Like, you're going to make a second contract, hit. Kyler Murray left out.
Yeah.
Right? We'll see.
Got paid, though.
Got paid, though.
Got
and
paid.
we believe Caleb Williams is going to hit.
Yeah.
So it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Also looking pretty good, that hot mic situation. The hot mic situation a couple weeks ago just came to fruition with hard fact as Marvin Jones Jr. today committed to Florida State. Wasn't no secrets here. This was obvious from day one, maybe day negative 150. This sounds like this one's been in the works for quite a while. I mean, last portal season, even in his first year at Georgia, it was like, hey, watch out. Florida State might nab him. Okay, and Florida State finally nabbed him.
Yeah, and he's going to do exactly what a majority of players do in this type of situation where they're going to leave a great program, they're going to go to another program, and he's going to put up great numbers and be the absolute alpha on defense that he was advertised coming out of high school. Georgia fans are probably going to be a little pissed off. Florida State fans are going to be jumping up and down, and Marvin Jones is going to go and have a great NFL career.
Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah, I was about to say, I do want to prepare our audience for that fact, or what I believe to be a fact. This guy's going to go down. He's going to be a big DN. He's going to play 5 technique, and he's going to make more plays in about 4 games than he ever did at Georgia. And the first thing Johnny-come-lately, who don't know shit about football, is going to do is say, ooh, look at Georgia. Can't develop. And it's so funny because I asked Kirby about this year. Your defensive ends, your jacks, your edge rushers, your guys who are at other programs, stat producers, they don't produce stats here. It's a known thing. It's an obvious thing. It's a very unit-based football program. And his answer was the answer that I was looking for, and it's the one that he's going to continue to give on the recruiting trail. Look at all the guys that we have drafted in the first round, despite all the facts around their box score stats, which there are none. There are very little box score stats at the University of Georgia, but it is the way it is because they play team-oriented defense. And you can still be a number 1 overall draft pick. You just got to put tape out there. And that's what guys like Michael Williams have been doing for the last couple of years. And it's not going to hinder Michael. Michael's going to go to the draft when he goes to the draft. He's going to be a first-round draft pick when he goes to the draft. I'm telling you that right now, even if he only has 3.5 sacks next year, which he won't because he's changing positions. And we told you that here first.
Ooh. I mean, let's look at it this way. When we were evaluating high school players' tapes the other day, we were saying like 2 minutes maybe, 2 minutes max. That's what you got to provide to me to let me know you're a verified dude. You are someone that can play at the University of Georgia or wherever. That's how long I need. I don't know how the NFL draft scout processing goes or anything like that and how they evaluate tape. I'm sure it's a lot more in depth because there's millions of dollars being invested into these football players. But I think you can tell within the first 3 minutes of a player's tape from college of like, yeah, that's what a first rounder is supposed to look like. That's what a contributor on the NFL level is supposed to look like. And okay, maybe you're a 4th rounder, we take a chance on you. The ceiling's a little high, we can take a chance on you. I mean, if you can put enough plays on a tape, you're going to be drafted into the NFL.
Yeah, 100%. And, I mean, we see it every single year. Body types win. It's Javon Ballard earlier. He was a first-round pick on tape. First-round pick with everything he's done at Georgia, probably not going to be a first-round pick. Just like someone else might not have. Maybe they got second-round tape. But if you're 6'6", 240, and you got long arms, you're top 15.
I just felt it move. AJ Swan going to LSU, and that's what we'll close it on tonight. AJ, I'm a huge proponent. I don't like it. Garrett Nussmeier's got 2 years. I love Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's going to be really good. I don't know where I see AJ playing at LSU. I saw him getting on the field at South Carolina. If not within this year, because maybe they land KJ Jefferson, whatever. I saw him getting on the field at South Carolina. I don't see him getting on the field at LSU.
Yeah, one of those weird transfer moves where you went somewhere and it's like you went there, but it doesn't look like you're going to get on the field. So what was the point in transferring anyways? You just wanted to get out of Nashville and that construction zone, I guess. I don't know.
It is a constant construction zone, and it is miserable. Hey, that was our show for tonight. If you liked it, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribing as well. We will be here tomorrow, and we'll be here Wednesday for our signing day super show. All 30 players broken down right here live. Multiple hours. Might be a 4-hour stream. Don't know. Love you. We'll see you tomorrow.